Committee on Homeland Security will come to order. The committee is meeting today to examine the President's FY 2018 budget request for the Department of Homeland Security and reauthorization of the department. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. On a sunny Tuesday morning in September 2001, the American people woke up and started their day as if it were any other. However, after receiving frantic phone calls from loved ones and after gathering around the nearest TV, people all across the country quickly learned that America was under attack. By the end of the day, the Twin Towers were knocked down, the Pentagon was on fire, and almost 3,000 innocent people were dead. This was not just an attack on the United States, but an attack on the civilized world, and our homeland was the battlefield. In the aftermath, we asked ourselves, how do we prevent this kind of attack from ever happening again? Our national leaders made many important decisions in response to the 9/11 attacks, and one was to create the Department of Homeland Security. While we are on stronger footing today, we must never forget that our enemies are always trying to bring war back to our nation's doorsteps. Islamist terrorism continues to spread around the world. The horrifying attacks in Manchester and London are the latest examples of a hateful ideology looking to strike innocent people when they least expect it. And just yesterday, we learned outside of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris was another attack, and also in Melbourne, Australia. Drug smugglers and human traffickers also are exploiting our porous borders, and nation states and others are turning digital breakthroughs into digital bombs. There are many steps we need to take to stay ahead of our enemies. They include reforming and improving the Department of Homeland Security through a first ever reauthorization bill and making sure that it has a budget with the necessary funds and resources to keep us safe. Agencies like the DoD are reauthorized every year with structural, policy, and program direction from Congress. However, DHS does not have the many advantages of routine congressional direction. This reauthorization will, one, assert Congress's Article I authority to write laws and give direction to the department. Two, create efficiencies, eliminate, consolidate, and streamline programs and offices. Three, protect taxpayer dollars and hold DHS more accountable. And four, support America's frontline defenders and first responders. Secretary Kelly, I know your commitment to this process is strong, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this as we go to the markup on the floor. I'd also like to thank you for the note in your testimony today about the importance of this endeavor and how it will help authorize and carry out your mission. A stronger DHS is our goal, and the American people deserve no less. Mr. Secretary, as you know, there's a lot of support in Congress for this reauthorization. At the beginning of the year, chairmen of 8 different committees in the House came together and signed a memorandum of understanding in support of this effort under the Speaker's signature, and progress is being made daily. We must also make sure the department is adequately funded and equipped with the tools it needs to carry out its missions. That is why I was pleased to see the President demonstrate his commitment to the safety of our homeland in the 2018 budget proposal. It was very reassuring to see that he is keeping his steadfast promise to secure our borders, to make cybersecurity a top priority, and support other key security efforts. Later today, the House will consider legislation sponsored by my colleague and chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Border and Maritime Security, Ms. McSally, that will make it easier to recruit new agents and officers to safeguard our homeland. This bill further demonstrates our committee's focus on securing the border. I was also encouraged by a $127 million increase for cybersecurity operations at the National Protection and Programs Directorate. Your commitment, sir, to elevate the cybersecurity mission at DHS will further enhance cyber operations and more effectively secure federal networks. From nation-state hacking to brand name breaches, our cyber rivals are waging a silent war against us and our defenses. This crisis extends from kitchen tables to corporate boardrooms, but I believe this budget proposal will help provide the tools to better combat these growing cyber risks. And while I am supportive of much of the President's budget request, I'd be remiss if I didn't express some concern about the cuts to grants and training programs that are vital to our first responders. As I mentioned earlier, we will address first responder programs in our authorization bill, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to support those who work tirelessly to secure our communities. Mr. Secretary, I'd like to thank you again for joining us here today and for keeping the American people protected. This is something that really unites each and every one of us. We stand ready to work with you and your team to keep this country safe. And as for me, let me just say we have your back. With that, the chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me welcome you, Secretary Kelly, to this hearing. But first, let me begin by expressing my condolences to those who lost loved ones in a terrorist attack in London last week, and offer my thoughts and prayers to all those injured. I join my colleagues in condemning this horrible violence and offering steadfast support to our friend and ally, Great Britain. We remain committed to securing our homeland from such attacks while upholding the values that truly make America great. Appallingly, in the immediate aftermath of the attack, President Trump used the tragic event as an opportunity to take to Twitter to rant about what he has again admitted and even boasted is a travel ban. Only afterward did he express support for the people and government of the United Kingdom. The president later took to Twitter again, this time to criticize his own Justice Department and the revised travel ban he himself signed after the courts found his initial travel ban unconstitutional. If the courts were unsure about the administration's intent with the misguided, un-American, unconstitutional travel bans, the president has removed any doubt, quite literally, by his own hands. Unfortunately, this behavior does nothing to address the very real security challenges we face at this critical juncture in our nation's history. Meaningful Homeland Security policy is not issued in a 140-character outburst. I wish I were more hopeful about President's ability to lead us through these challenges, but his recent Homeland Security budget request to Congress certainly does not inspire any confidence. Today, our Secretary of Homeland Security, John Kelly, is before this committee in support of that budget and the Trump administration's priority for the Department of Homeland Security. While we are glad to have the Secretary before us, I do not envy the job he has this morning. The fiscal year budget he has been sent here to defend is quite simply indefensible, especially in light of recent events. Again, the proposal reflects President Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of the federal government's role in national security and his misguided priority for protecting the homeland. The world just witnessed brave first responders coming to the aid of the injured in London and Manchester. Yet, in his budget request, President Trump wants to gut grant programs that police, firefighters, and other emergency responders across America rely on to help prevent and respond to search attacks. Specifically, the Trump budget cuts $667 million from grant programs to state and local agencies, including pre-disaster mitigation grants and counterterrorism funding. While I was home over the weekend, I met with first responders, and a lot of them said, if that happens, I'm not certain that we'll be able to keep our state and counties and cities safe, because that, in essence, is an unfunded mandate. That also includes slashing the state Homeland Security grant program and the Urban Area Security Initiative by 25%. Every member of Congress, Democrat and Republican, represents communities that would suffer under these cuts. President Trump's first budget proposal claims to put us on a path to American greatness, but the only message it sends to our nation's first responders is you're on your own. Americans can be assured that Democrats will be fighting in the weeks and months ahead to restore funding for these vital preparedness and response programs. I hope my Republican colleagues will stand united with us in the interest of our first responders and all Americans. Similarly, at a time when the threats to the homeland are evolving at a rapid pace, President Trump wants to cut the research and development programs that aim to deliver the next generation technologies we need to stay safe. His budget slashes the department's Science and Technology Directorate by $144 million, devastating DHS research and development programs and halting progress on tomorrow's cybersecurity technologies. Given the cybersecurity threats we face from adversaries around the world, including Russia, China, and others, the administration should be redoubling its cyber investment, not gutting them. Why does President Trump's budget proposal make cuts to these essential homeland security programs? To help pay for programs that score political points with his base, but will do little or nothing to address the real security challenges facing our nation. Building a boondoggle border wall that will cost billions and strip land from private property owners, but do little to better secure our southern border. Just today, we now hear comments from the White House saying that their wall will now be 50 feet high. So it remains to be seen what happens when that occurs. Hiring a massive deportation force to tear families apart and take dreamers and other members of our communities from their homes while ignoring desperately needed staffing for our nation's ports of entry. Lining the pockets of private prison industry with an additional $1.2 billion in taxpayers' money to expand immigration detention capacity to its largest size in history. We cannot afford to squander taxpayers' dollars on programs that fail to address the varied and sophisticated homeland security threats facing our country. We cannot allow political expediency to trump investing in the initiatives that are essential to protecting the homeland. The American people deserve better, and Congress must do better. As the budget process moves forward, I look forward to working with my colleagues to provide the Department of Homeland Security the budget it needs to do the job of securing our nation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. Other members are reminded that the opening statements may be submitted for the record. Today, we're pleased to welcome the Honorable John F. Kelly. I want to thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. Witness's full written statement will appear in the record. Chair now recognizes Secretary Kelly for his opening statement.
Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Thompson, and distinguished members of the committee. Every day, the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security protect Americans from the threats we face. And so it is a great pleasure to appear before the committee today to talk to you about the tremendous professionals of the department and the critical missions they carry out in service of America every day and night for 365 days a year. Every citizen of the nation understands that federal government's fundamental responsibility begins and ends with the protection of the homeland and the security of our people. No other mission is as important, no other consideration more pressing. The President's fiscal year 2018 budget request for the Department of Homeland Security will make it possible for us to continue our current ability to protect our nation and its people. However, the threats posed by nation states, non-nation states, and transnational criminal organizations require us to think very differently about our role at the department. We can no longer think in terms of defense somewhere out there. Rather, we must think in terms of the security of the homeland across the numerous domains of a potential attack. The Department of Homeland Security is making a difference in fighting the home game, while the Department of Defense fights the away game. Working together, along with all other agencies of the federal government, America is made safer through this process. Because of the dedication and effective interagency interaction with the DNI, CIA, NCTC, FBI, NSA, DEA, ATF, and over 1 million state, local, and tribal law enforcement professionals, America today is more secure, better prepared, and more resilient in a way that most could not have fathomed the day before 9/11. But the plots to attack the nation are numerous, and the perpetrators are relentless, and the threats have never been greater. As a result, we need a fully funded annual budget that matches our mission, no more continuing resolutions, and I think this budget does that. When you're talking about the President's FY 2018 request for $44.1 billion in funding for DHS, it's easy to lose sight of what's behind each dollar. But when you get right down to it, behind each and every dollar are hardworking men and women who have dedicated their careers and in many cases risked their lives to protect the American people. Every dollar invested in the men and women of DHS is an investment in prosperity, freedom, and the rule of law. Above all is an investment in the security of the American people. As far as I am concerned, recent events show that you cannot invest too much in security. The terrorist attacks on innocent civilians in Kabul, Cairo, South Asia, Manchester, London, and yesterday Tehran are all horrific reminders of the dangers we face globally. They show how sophisticated and capable the threat is and how they, the terrorists, think globally in organizing and executing their attacks. The widely reported recent cyber attacks on our infrastructure and businesses and potential plots against global aviation are further examples of the range of threats we now face. These varied threats also illustrate the need to do everything we can to keep our people safe. That means significantly improving the effectiveness of verifying identities, making sure people are who they say they are before they travel to our country, while at the same time working with our international partners to raise their awareness and raise their defenses and force them to do so if need be. Domestically, one of the most important enhancements is Real ID, a requirement passed by the Congress 12 years ago in which most of our states and territories have taken seriously and already adopted. Many others are still working hard to comply. In those 12 years since the law passed, some in elected or appointed state and federal positions have chosen to drag their feet or even ignore this federal law. I will not. Real ID will make America safer. It already has. Real ID will soon be enforced at our airports and land ports of entry in all federal facilities. It is critically important. It is a critically important 9/11 Commission recommendation that others have been willing to ignore, but I will not. I will ensure it is implemented on schedule with no extension for states that are not taking it seriously. For those states and territories that cannot or will not make the January 2018 deadline, as I have been telling governors and members of Congress for months now, they should be honest and encourage their citizens to acquire other forms of Real ID compliant identification like passports. Additionally, in all of this, we need to prevent bad actors regardless of religion, race, or nationality from entering our country. In recent years, we have witnessed an unprecedented spike in terrorist travel. There are more terrorist hotspots and foot soldiers today than almost any other time in modern history. In Syria and Iraq, for instance, we have seen thousands of jihadist fighters converge to fight in the caliphate from more than 120 different countries. As our military and coalition partners take the fight to the enemy in Iraq and Syria, many jihadi fighters are returning home to recruit, plot, and conduct terrorist attacks. Already, they have put many of our closest allies in their crosshairs, and they are targeting our homeland and our interests overseas through a combination of inspired, enabled, and directed attacks. With this in mind, the President has issued clear direction in the form of an executive order to the entire executive branch to improve our vetting and screening standards and to put a pause on the entry of aliens from 6 countries so we can enhance security throughout. These are countries mired in civil war whose governments sponsor terrorists or which have been overrun by extremists. They are the same terror hotspots Congress and the previous administration designated in 2015 and 2016 for additional travel scrutiny. At the time, the Obama administration and Congress believes we needed to focus additional attention on these nations and potentially others so that certain foreign nationals who visited them would receive an extra layer of screening. It has nothing to do with religion or skin color or the way they live their lives. It is about security for the American people, nothing else. While some are endlessly focused on which label to apply to a single portion of the President's EO, the 250,000 professional men and women I have the honor of leading instead focus on the serious work of how best to secure this nation. And we know that fully implementing the EO would clearly and substantially increase our ability to secure the nation from those who seek to do us harm. Since the President's EO was announced, we have seen a number of terrorist attacks in the West tied back to those countries of concern in some way, as well as clear signs that terrorist groups like ISIS continue to use refugee flows as a Trojan horse to deploy operatives to conduct attacks. Yet the injunctions currently tie our hands when it comes to guarding against threats from those locations or from deliberate attempts to infiltrate refugee flows. It is hard for me to imagine that in light of the current high danger levels that are indeed increasing, that any government entity would prohibit DHS from reviewing the screening of individuals from certain terror hotspots and from putting in place better vetting in high-risk locations. I can tell you right now, because of the court injunctions, for instance, I am not fully confident in our ability to prevent those who seek to do us harm from taking advantage of our generous immigration and visa system. Critics seem to only think about the temporary suspension of entry from those most problematic of countries, but let me provide a few examples of the kinds of things we cannot do because of these injunctions. We are prohibited from conducting a worldwide review to identify additional information we need from each country to better determine whether an immigration applicant from that country is a security or public safety threat. We are prohibited from going to any countries identified as lacking in this review and asking them to provide the necessary information to enhance our vetting and screening of their citizens. We are prohibited from reviewing the refugee admissions program to determine what additional procedures we should use to ensure that refugee applicants do not pose a threat to the security and welfare of the United States. Bottom line, I have been enjoined from doing things that I know would make America safer, and I anxiously await the courts to once again allow the executive branch to do its constitutional duty and protect Americans from all threats, foreign and domestic. The men and women of DHS will do everything we can, and always, always within the law, to keep the American people safe. But this delay has prevented us from doing that. And those most familiar with the reality of the threats we face today, we believe we need to do more to protect our homeland. I know the members of this committee understand this mission, and I'd like to particularly thank all of the members of the committee for your continued work in drafting reauthorization language for the department. The department has not been authorized during its existence. I look forward to supporting the passage of legislation that provides us with the necessary authorities to successfully fulfill our primary task of keeping the American people safe in a more streamlined and unified manner. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, and I thank you for your continued support of the men and women of the department and the mission we all take so seriously. Thank you. I remain committed to working with the Congress always in protecting the American people. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Secretary. I now recognize myself for questions. You know, it seems like every day Americans turn on the television and we're not sure if we're going to see a terrorist attack. They seem so commonplace. With Manchester, London, we just had an attack at Notre Dame Cathedral 2 days ago. And of course, Paris, Brussels, Nice, Berlin. I mean, constantly, and Europe is certainly in the crosshairs here with both the foreign fighter flow and the refugee flow. We are in the season of Ramadan, and as you know, sir, they have called for more terrorist attacks during this holy season. And they're one plane flight away from the United States. We passed, had a task force last Congress, have one this Congress to help stop the flow of foreign fighter travel into the United States. Out of that, we had the visa waiver security bill. And this month, we'll be marking up a visa security bill as well to increase what you talked about, and that is more increased vetting in high-threat areas. So my question to you is, to give assurance to the American people, what are you doing to stop this threat that we're seeing hit Europe so hard right now, from coming into the United States?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thanks for the question. I mean, you know this, the committee members know this. We have this incredible institutions that protect the American public. And the good news is right now, from the threat outside the United States, some of the organizations I've already mentioned, you know, the Department of Defense, CIA, National Counterterrorism Center, those kind of people, they are overseas, either tracking them down or killing them every day, working with partners within the coalition, some partners very publicly, some partners not so publicly. All of that is working very, very well for us. In terms of my department, we have over 2,000 professionals from the department deployed overseas, working with partners around the globe, working with them to upgrade their, as an example, their aviation security. And if they don't upgrade it, we will not allow aircraft to fly from those locations to the United States. Obviously, inside the United States is a different kind of threat. Let's assume for a second we can keep the foreign-born or the exterior threat away. The internal threat of the so-called lone wolfer inspired by these various websites and magazines, that's a threat that no one can predict. I have beat myself to death in trying to figure out how to do it. Every time I talk to a foreign leader, just yesterday with the Israelis, you know, how do they do it? How can you predict someone that's going to go from normal kid to mass murderer? How do you do that? No one can give an answer. Everyone guesses. Everyone's trying. But the good news thing about our country is that we have institutions like Homeland Security, like the FBI, all the law enforcement, 1 million law enforcement, who are today much, much better at all of this than they were the day before 9/11. You know, many of the grants we've provided, I think $45 billion over the last 15 years, many of the grants were focused early on, particularly in helping municipalities get the training, get the equipment, get the fusion centers and things like that that they could plug into. 15 years on, whether it's a large city like the New York City Police Department, that is, to say the least, impressive in what they do relative to this threat, right down to the smallest municipality in the middle of America. It's in the DNA now of our law enforcement people, and the sharing that goes on between them and the federal authorities, including my own department, has put us in a better place, to say the least. But I would say that the one concern, and it's less and less of a concern because of what we're doing, the one concern I do have is the southwest border. When I was in uniform, responsible for the United States Southern Command, I never missed an opportunity to make the point, and this was frankly long before I was looking at the kind of threats that I'm looking at daily today, that my belief is when there is a terrorist threat or a terrorist event in the United States that comes from outside the country, my belief is, until recently, that threat would have gotten here through the network, the worldwide network that flows through Central America and across our wide open southwest border. We're doing the best we can to cut that off. But I think if there's an event, certainly up until recently, that happens in the United States when we do the forensics, if it came from overseas, my belief is, without question, it would have come up through the southwest border. And we're working on that with our partners, the Mexicans in particular.
Yeah, and I recall when you were the head of Southcom, General Kelly, you and I visited in the SCIF about this very issue. Leads me to my next question. I just got back from Mexico City yesterday. Some of the members in the room were with me in a delegation meeting with a congressional delegation from Mexico. And we had a lot of, I have to say it was a very productive, very good discussion on our shared mutual interest of both energy and modernizing NAFTA. But when it comes to security, no longer was the blame game there. It was realized we have a shared mutual interest in security, both Mexico's southern border, which I think we should be focused on. It's 200 miles versus 2,000, but also our southern border as well. There are proposals in this budget regarding what is known as the wall. Can you tell me what this concept of a wall looks like?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, I mean, in hearings and in other events, I have been down, but more importantly, to the border and talked to the CVP professionals that know better than anyone what it would take to at least begin the process of safeguarding the southwest border. And I want to emphasize, not seal it. I mean, the president has directed me that getting control of the southwest border doesn't mean inhibiting in any way the legal crossing of the millions of people every year, tens of millions of people every year, and the millions of trucks in normal commerce. So we're figuring a way to do that. And so we will not, and if anything, we'll speed the process up using probably different types of technology. But as we evaluate the length of the border, 2,000 miles, I would first say that, you've heard me say this many times, the beginning of the protection of the southwest border really begins 1,500 miles south, and that all of our partners, to include our great partner Colombia and Mexico. But if specifically on the border and the wall aspect, we look at that as an ongoing opportunity to provide security. There are places along that border where clearly a physical barrier of some type is either too hard or doesn't. We don't need to do it because there's not a lot of crossing. There are places that are so remote, they're so rough terrain that we don't, and we could cover that with patrols and technology. There's other places along the border, particularly near the urban areas on that border, that my CVP professionals are asking for additional barrier. It might be a wall in South Texas that would then reinforce, so to speak, the levee system there, and it might be a see-through wall in other parts of the border. So there's a lot of issues, but we're this year looking at some prototypes. I am not involved in that because of the issue of how acquisitions go and contracting go, but my people tell me it's progressing well, and we'll ultimately decide what form that physical barrier will take. And of course, all of that will be reinforced by technology of various types, UAVs, and certainly the great men and women of CVP.
Well, thank you for that, and we look forward to working with you on that. Chair now recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again, Mr. Secretary, for being here. I applaud your recognition yesterday that when a member of Congress would contact you for information, you felt obligated to provide that information, whether it's individual, as a committee, or what have you. So can you, for the record, repeat whether or not you feel an obligation when a member of Congress writes you relative to his or her duties in your lane, an obligation to respond back?
I will, Mr. Thompson. There's various types, of course, of congressional inquiries. The things that we term, constituent issues, those are easy. We respond to those as fast as we can. We get a fair number of inquiries that sometimes it is pre-decisional, like what are you going to do here or there? And of course, in those cases, because it's pre-decisional, we don't know what we're going to do, so we wouldn't write back specifics. But in all cases, we would get a phone call back to or a letter even back to the member to say, can't answer that quite yet, pre-decisional. Then there's the other issues of just questions that are part of the congressional oversight process. Our preference, my preference certainly, would to see that come up through a committee, because an awful lot of the time you get multiple letters of the same kind, and it would be, in my view, for my time management perspective and the workload, I'd prefer to see those come up through a committee, but we won't hesitate to answer them. One of the things let me step back and say, in my confirmation process, I think every senator I talked to in office calls beat me up very, very brutally about the fact that my department was among the worst in the federal government for responding to congressional inquiries. I made that a big part of the changes we made. And by the way, that same thing could be said of our relationship with the media, and we're fixing that as well too. But the point is, on the congressional inquiries, my folks are leaning forward on this, and some of the requests we come in, whether they're from an individual member or even a chairman or ranking member, are very long, detailed requests. that we can't, answer overnight given workload. So what we will always do is either call your staff or frequently write a letter back saying, we got the request, it's going to take us some time. It's a huge request, and just bear with us, but we'll get back to you. But no, Mr. Thompson, my sense is that I am proud of what we do in the department. I am proud of every man and woman in the department, and this is a way to tell my story, our story, to the United States Congress.
And I thank you for that, and I look forward to working with you on that, because in order to make sound public policy, you need information, and so much of that information you have there at the department that members of this committee and otherwise would need.
Mr. Thompson, if I could, just by way of example, since I've been the secretary, and it's less than 4 months, we've had leaned forward, had 37 different hearings, not me, and of course, in all of them, thank goodness, but 37 separate hearings, 57 witnesses, and over nearly 973 engagements with members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the hill. So I'm serious about it. We're leaning forward to inform the Congress.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. With this budget, Mr. Secretary, do you see yourself being able to fill the vacancies that you presently have at the senior level within the department?
I do. I mean, what we have now, of course, throughout the government, but in my case, I've got, other than myself, one other political person that's been approved by the confirmation process. Today, I have FEMA replacement Brock Long, who's sitting in front of the committee right now on the other side. We have the TSA administrator announced, and he'll go through the process. But the good news is certainly that even though they're important to have a political, head of the department, a capable and qualified head, and that has been my bottom line in all that we've done in terms of trying to fill those billets, capable and qualified. But we have thousands of tremendous career professionals who, regardless of who the secretary is, and they come and go, so we will have the Homeland Security Department is functioning very well.
Fine. The president tweeted recently that the extreme vetting process is ongoing. Are you familiar with that tweet?
I am now.
You are now. Are we extreme vetting, to your knowledge?
We are a couple of things we're doing. We are on the visa side. The State Department, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, has just issued some additional questions that his consular officers will use as they interview individuals to come to the United States, essentially to give a little bit more burden on them to convince us that they're coming here for the right reason, and in the visa process that they will leave, which is, as I think the ranking member knows, a huge number of the individuals that are in the United States illegally came here on a visa and simply decided to stay. On the refugee side, we are looking at ways, and I've described them a number of times, but we're looking at ways that we can deal with people who, for whatever reason, most of them are coming from countries that have no FBI, no real police set up, no real records keeping set up. They don't have passports. So how do we look at that person and decide whether that person should come to the United States and will be a productive member as a refugee? Right now, we're for many, many years, we've been assuming the stories they're telling us are true. The fact that who they are, we're assuming they're telling us the truth. I think that there are ways to work towards a better understanding of who the people are, why they're coming. And that would add to the extreme vetting. Right now, I'm a little hesitant to go too far because we are enjoined on the EO, but we are doing some things.
Okay, but I guess at some point, can you provide this committee with whatever the extreme vetting consists of?
Sure. Yes, sir.
So we'll have some knowledge of it.
Yep.
And I guess my last point, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, some of us are concerned about private citizens contacting foreign governments and that kind of thing. And Jared Kushner was, before he was any official, contacted members of the Russian government. And some of us are concerned about whether or not that contact and the conversations that, in terms of back channel and other things, blurred the lines of what private citizens could do. And I need from you some assurance that those kinds of contacts by private citizens, if they are made by private citizens, that either we have knowledge of it or that someone in an official capacity will have knowledge of it.
Well, in the case of Jared Kushner, I mean, first of all, I mean, he's a great American. He was, at the time, in the transition process, I mean, obviously the Trump administration had yet to take over, but that transition process is one in which you are transitioning about to take over the controls from the outgoing administration. During that period, I would offer that Jared Kushner, I don't know if he had a security clearance yet, but certainly was working towards that, and of course has ultimately got a very, very high security clearance. At the time, he didn't know anything that would be classified because he wasn't in the government yet. And you know, Mr. Thompson, I think there's many, many ways to communicate. The so-called back channel way is very, very common. If he was in the process, knowing full well that he was within weeks and even days of becoming part of the United States government, working for President Trump in some official capacity, the fact that he was opening channels, talking to people like an ambassador from anywhere, to say that, we would like to have an opportunity to meet with you and discuss some of these issues, whatever they are, once we are in the government. I not only don't see anything wrong with that, I would say that that's the way the government works. Back channel communication. Now, all of that, whatever he may have shared once he became a government official, of course, that's part of the governmental process. So he wasn't going to keep any secrets. If he'd have said, I talked to some ambassador and said, these are the things that are concerning this administration, I mean, that would be part of the overall effort, national security effort to deal with.
And I appreciate the chairman's indulgence, but some of us are concerned that a private citizen would have that kind of conversation before the clearance is issued. And so I'm sure at some point.
But remember, he didn't, the conversation, as I read the newspapers, I haven't spoken to them about it, but he didn't have a clearance yet, he wasn't in the government yet, didn't know anything yet, but the idea that he was maybe contacting people to say, look, once we take over, I'd like to at least have an opportunity to talk to you offline about certain things when it's appropriate.
I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, let me again commend you on the outstanding job, both in your military career and now at Homeland Security. And from talking to people in the department, you've definitely taken a hold of it, and I want to commend you for that. Having said that, there's two areas I'd like to cover. The first is on grants, specifically UASI and SHISCAP and port security, and also on MS-13, which has been responsible for 17 homicides in my district in the last year alone. First, on the grants. As I see the budget, roughly the cuts are between 25% and 30%. I really would not be able to support that. Having said that, the Obama administration proposed even much more severe cuts in the last year, close to 50% in some cases. But I opposed them then, and I really have to oppose these cuts now. And again, not even to have a debate, just to lay out the case, just taking my district, Ms. Rice's district, we're in the district which includes New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, and part of Rockland. New York City Police Department alone has over 1,000 police officers working full-time on counterterrorism and intelligence. They're performing a federal responsibility. And depending on how we look at it, they prevented between 15 and 20 attacks over the last 15 years. They comprise a large portion of the JTTF. Similarly, in Nassau and Suffolk counties, they have units working just on terrorism and counterintelligence. And to me, this is a federal responsibility, and I'm not aware of any waste. I mean, every program is accounted for dollar for dollar. The programs are all approved. This is literally, in many cases, a situation of life and death. These officers are out there, again, 24/7, over 1,000 of them, and this isn't a case of somebody's cousin getting a job or some political appointee. These are all top-rate professionals, and this doesn't even include, which is paid separately, the police officers that are assigned overseas. I think there are 18 different capitals around the world. So, again, I would just emphasize that it would be very difficult for me to support a budget request or an appropriation which does not put in the full amount. Again, I want to emphasize, not to make this partisan, I strongly oppose what President Obama suggested, and I'm also opposing this. And I'll just leave it at that, and then you can answer. But second, just on MS-13, if you could just maybe touch on the fact that the unaccompanied minors, and like the police commissioner in Suffolk County, where these 17 murders have been carried out, I think more than half of them involve unaccompanied minors. These are young children who came in the country within the last 2 or 3 years. The evidence from the Suffolk County Police Department, and I would say the Suffolk County Suffolk County government is run by Democrats. This is not a partisan issue at all. Have shown that MS-13 in some ways is game in the system. Some of those unaccompanied minors were sent up here by MS-13. In other cases, MS-13 is either threatened, coerced, or paid off families in places like Central Islip and Brentwood to volunteer to take these kids, and then they come into schools. And we have a school in my district where one whole hallway is dedicated to MS-13. It's a no-go area unless you're MS-13. So that's, and most of those kids came in as unaccompanied minors. So I guess if you could address the issue of whether or not that program can be improved, corrected, modified, and also on the question of the grants.
On the MS-13s, right, I think you know that unaccompanied minors are a different, there's many different, God knows, there's unlimited categories of people that come and claim this, the other thing. I've yet to get my arms around all of it. But I will say this, of the 72% reduction in illegal aliens that we've seen moving into the United States in the last 3.5 months, really, a key, 72% reduction, a key, an even better number is the unaccompanied minors are down even lower than that. So that's a good, and for that matter, family units. And those are very complicated, the minors and the family units. Those are very complicated individuals. But let me get to the MS-13. Unaccompanied minor comes to the United States. They're paid, they're trafficked up here through the network. Usually their families are contributing. I mean, that's human trafficking by any definition. They pay a trafficker to take their less than 18-year-old up through the network, deposit them into the United States, and of course they turn themselves over right away to the first, they look for the first uniformed person they can find and say, I'm unaccompanied, this is my age, and I have a family member that lives in Islip, New York. And so we have to, because they're minors, we, DHS, have to turn them over to HHS, who then finds them a place. So he's got the address of his whatever family member that's up in Islip. They do some checking and take the, if it checks out, which it virtually always does, then they take the unaccompanied minor, and that's basically the end of the cycle. Remember, in most cases, these people, the vast majority of people that come up from that part of the world are not bad people, but they are simple people. They're uneducated people as a general rule, coming up here for economic purposes. So you take a 16, 17-year-old that can't speak English, can't read or write, he's got a 6th grade education, and now you bring him to Islip, New York, how long he stays in the education system there before MS-13 just recruits him. It happens, by the way, the whole route. I mean, a lot of these kids never make it. The males, and well, females too, never make it through Mexico because they're siphoned off into the gangs or into prostitution if they're particularly young women. So, I mean, they're not really able to assimilate very quickly, and consequently, they get siphoned off in MS-13. It's a huge problem. As you know, I think, Congressman, DHS did a full court press, and for a couple of weeks, about a month ago, picked up 1,300 gang members. Many of them were MS-13. It is a real cancer and getting worse. So to a degree, some of them are scamming the system in terms of getting up here. So many of the MS-13 members are, in fact, unaccompanied minors that came up here, particularly in the big explosion, the big movement in 2014. On the grants, like anything, sir, we don't have an unlimited amount of money. We're looking in many ways. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, the level of training and expertise within the departments, particularly a place like New York City, the level of expertise is so much higher than it was a decade ago when 9/11 happened, more than a decade ago. And the idea is that we've asked that the local municipalities in many cases have some of their own skin in the game, and that's why we looked at that 25% cut, that they would compensate. We're still going to get 75%, that they would make up the 25% difference. And I'll end with this. I mean, there is a different threat out there. I mean, places like New York City are clearly a threat. They're a target. They're a symbol of America. Washington being the same way. This building probably being the ultimate. But the way this threat now is metastasized around the country, whether it's New York City, the largest municipality in the country, or some little town in the middle of Arkansas, the potential is about the same, in my view, for a lone wolf attack. Clearly, if they really want to make a big splash, they go to a place like New York City. But we're trying to wrestle right now with, if every single city, town, village in America is at risk of the lone wolf, inspired by, generally speaking, the one constant is the websites, or is the internet. How do we, if we can, how do we get our arms around that threat? Because that is what it is. That's the domestic threat. That's what it's inside the country. And obviously, we still have, I think, the overseas threat at an arm's length. But I would just close by saying, but they're trying to get here, particularly get after our aviation. They are trying every day very sophisticated threats, and they're numerous, to try to knock down one of our airplanes on the way over here from, right now, Europe and the Middle East. I don't know if that answers your question, sir, but probably not satisfactory, but that's the best I can do.
Continue to work through it. Thank you, Secretary. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The Secretary is here till 12:30, so I'm going to try to hold members to the 5-minute rule as much as we can to afford all members an opportunity to ask questions. Ms. Jackson-Lee is recognized.
Let me thank the chairman and ranking member, Mr. Secretary. We have known each other for a good while, and I want to again thank you for your service and the service and sacrifice that many of us know of your family. I think that should never go unsaid and unacknowledged. Saying that, I also want you to accept that my questions are not personal, and that I have worked, as I know many members here. I see my good friend, Mr. Rogers, the ranking member, and many others, chairman, who've been on this committee for a very long time. And so when we critique or criticize, I still would hope that the administration would work with us on the issues that we need to have worked on. So I am going to ask to have a set, with your distinguished legislative counsel sitting behind you, call where we speak directly about Mr. Escobar. And that is a young man. This is the picture of his wife. We have sent letters to President Trump. We've sent letters to yourself. Mr. Escobar was in the middle of an administrative appeal and was deported. He had a work permit. He had no criminal background, if I might say, a church man. And he left a wife working at the Texas Children's Hospital. And so I know how many others. This is a singular case, and children under 10. He needs to be returned to the United States because his appeal process was improperly responded to.
But this one,
I will be at the department, and you do not have full staff, and we need to work very hard for nominations to come forward. And I know that my friends in the Senate, where there is a reputable individual, will be ready to do so. So let me just quickly move forward. I'm putting this on the record as well. I'm disappointed that there are cuts in the Office of Civil Rights that are very important in the privacy office. I hope that we will be correcting that. The $1 billion border wall is one that is ineffective. You just got through saying that those who are coming across the border are pretty harmless. And we're putting a big border wall and therefore denying a number of important projects. For example, cutting the law enforcement officer LEO reimbursement, where my airports, 300 airports, will not have TSA requirement to have a law enforcement officer presence. We've had a lot of incidences that have been, if you will, prevented by law enforcement and this program being at our airports. The Viper program, the K-9 program, you're cutting it from 31 to 8. The K-9 units are valuable. The Secret Service that has more protectees than they ever had, cutting it $108 million. I would like that back in writing. I want to focus on this question after I've done Mr. Escobar. We now understand that the president's tweets are public policy, or the policy of the White House. My question will be, when I finish, was the president and his tweets making us more secure or insecure? Is he more secure, are we more secure when the president meets with 2 Russian operatives, they have names, they're in the cabinet of Mr. Putin, and jeopardizes the classified information of the American people? Is America more secure? Are we more secure when the president, in the midst of a tragedy in London, bashes the mayor of the city of London, who happens to be a Muslim, who stood against the terrorism, but this president in his tweets are bannering, bashing, insulting? His tweets become policy. I ask you, Mr. Secretary, in all of the hacking, in this memo that has just come out with the Mideast, where we have to contend with fixing that, is it not clear that Russia is our enemy and the enemy of the world, and we have a president that tweets like he is their best friend? Does the president's tweets make America safe or unsafe?
Well, certainly I don't think Russia is our friend and is approaching certainly what I would define as an enemy. But I don't think we should not talk to them. I mean, after all, they are who they are. I take your point, though. I mean, you know, the president tweets. In my view, I have my marching orders from the president to me personally. If his tweets are then going to be turned into policy, certainly the White House staff would work that, notify me, and if I didn't see it that way, would go over and see the president. My mandate, my sacred task is to keep America safe. And as far as the tweets and all go, certainly I'm aware of them, follow them to the degree that I can. But I don't, I have a course set on securing the United States. And if those tweets then are turned into some change in policy, because that's what the president wants, then well, I'll have that discussion with the president and the White House staff.
So you will tell the Congress when you believe that a tweet that the president has now generated, which Mr. Sean Spicer, I believe, in the last 24 to 48 hours, has indicated that we should listen to the president's tweets, that they are in fact policy. You will notify us if that is damaging to the security of the American people.
I would, but again, I just emphasize that just because he tweets it, I mean, then it's up to the White House staff to work with him about developing policy, changing policy, or maybe doing nothing. And then I would find out about that. And if I thought that was detrimental to keeping the homeland safe, I would go over there and change someone's mind.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
I thank
Mr.
you.
Rogers is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your attendance and your long and continued service to our country. I know that you and the President are hard at work towards securing our southwest border, and you've spoken about that earlier in your testimony. One of the big themes in the President's campaign for the office was the fact that he intended to ensure that our neighbors to the south helped us with the cost of securing that border. To that end, I've introduced a bill recently called the Border Wall Funding Act, which would assess a 2% fee on remittances from the United States to countries in South America. We generate $1 billion a year dedicated toward helping offset the cost of securing the southwest border. Is that something, those kind of innovative funding sources, something you're open to or encouraging, or have you had discussions with the President about how we're going to do that? Because from what I've read, it's going to be $10 to $15 billion over and above what we're currently spending.
Congressman, I would start by saying I really have no idea how much it will cost ultimately, because we haven't really, well, we haven't at all picked any prototypes. I mean, if we go with one design, it's quite expensive, very expensive. If we go with another design, it might be half that cost. So I'm not pushing back, or I just don't know how much it will cost. I hear 40 billion, I've heard 10 billion. Most of it comes out of the press. I don't know where they get their numbers because, and I've been asked numerous times by members of Congress this very question. I don't know how much it will cost because I don't know what we're going to build. I don't know how long it's going to be built. But that aside for a second, the funding, wherever it comes from, I have not had conversations. It's not really in my lane to raise the money. If the president, whatever I get, you can bet once we decide on a design, once I get enough money to build X miles of whatever it is, the design is, then clearly, we've already done this, in fact, talked to the CVP people to say, where do you want some additional physical barrier? And they'll tell you, sir, if you can get me, Laredo, if you can get me 16 more miles, I'm pretty happy. If you can get me 28 miles, that kind of thing. Other places, they'll say, we're pretty good with the high-tech towers we have here that give us day and night visibility over large stretches of the border. Sure, if we have unlimited amounts of time and money, build me some wall. Walls work. Physical barriers is a better way to put it. But that said, we're talking to the CBP folks, and this is a process that's clearly going to take some time. I mean, there's issues of land acquisition and all the rest of it.
Right. The Congress has been pretty busy at work in these first few months, unwinding many of the worst Obama-era policies through the Congressional Review Act. However, there's two highly unconstitutional policies that remain in place. Obama's amnesty program is called DACA, Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, and DAPA, Deferred Action on Parents of Americans. What are your plans to end these unconstitutional immigration amnesty programs?
Sir, of all the things I have on my plate right now, I'm looking very, very hard at whatever it is, 11 million individuals in the United States illegally. We're working very, very hard, and in spite of what sometimes with the press, almost all the time, the press reports, we are truly going after people, individual, not sweeps, not checkpoints, not roadblocks, not raiding meatpacking plants. We're going after individuals that are A, here illegally, and then B, have other violations. The best, we're trying to go after some of the worst. Now, that said, other illegals in this process fall into our hands. We don't have discretion, but they're putting to proceedings, which, as you know, I think goes on for years and years and years. It's about 750,000, roughly 780,000 people that fall into this category of DACA. I have many, many people tell me it's illegal. I have many, many people tell me that it's not illegal, that the president had the authority to give me or my predecessor to do it. I will say for the record, we are not targeting DACA registrants right now. There's a lot of misinformation, misreporting that we've gone after DACA. The people that have claimed to be DACA recipients that we have in fact taken into custody fall into two categories. One category is they were going to register but didn't get around to it, so they're not DACA. Or the other category is they were registered but they broke the law. And when they came into our hands, they're not DACA, and we put them in the proceedings. And I go back always to this issue of, ICE, DHS do not deport people. The law deports people. There's a step-by-step process. Everyone that falls into a certain category has rights under the laws. Some of these things go on for years and years and years. I just was familiarizing myself with one the other day. 16 years in the process, and that included 22 different steps in front of federal judges as well as immigration judges, and ultimately there's an order to deport, and we got to do it. I don't have the discretion, and a lot of people don't understand that. But the point on DACA is, right now, sir, I am hoping, frankly, because there is bipartisan support, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the hill, for doing something about DACA legally, legislatively. And rather, with all due respect, not you, but I get beat up a lot by a lot of members of Congress on DACA. And again, we are not targeting DACA, but I get beat up a lot about why we're going after DACA. We're not. But my back to them is, if you feel so strongly about it, and you clearly do, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you work with your colleagues, both sides of the aisle, because there is a lot of support for this, and change the law? And I'll follow that law.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Langevin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your service, and thank you for your testimony here today. I have several questions, so I'm going to ask you to be as concise as possible. With respect to the wave of terrorist activity happening across Europe right now, we've been briefed previously that there are thousands of European individuals who have gone into Syria or Iraq and have fought with ISIS and have now returned back to these European countries. We have been briefed in the past that because of European privacy laws, that it's been difficult to necessarily get information sharing, robust information sharing from our intel partners of those people that might want to travel here to the United States. I know that this committee and the Congress has acted to tighten up restrictions on individuals who have traveled to Iraq or Syria or parts of the Middle East and then coming to the United States from visa waiver countries. I want to know, are we getting robust intel sharing from our European partners? Is there anything in European privacy laws that are inhibiting the United States from getting robust information about individuals with European passports who might come here to the United States with nefarious intent?
I would say, Congressman, there's a new wind blowing, or a new attitude changing right now in the last several months, certainly since I've been in this job. Many of the countries out around the world have different privacy laws than we do. Some of them are tighter. What they're facing now, potentially, is anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 returning citizens from the jihad, from the caliphate. They're not going home because it's like they've been cured of their mental illness here, but they're going home because the caliphate is being defeated on the ground by in Iraq and Syria, and they're going home to continue the jihad, only in a different way.
I understand that, but I want to know about the intel sharing here.
So we are experiencing a new interest in cooperating with the United States on the kind of things you're addressing by the Europeans. The other factor, not only the returning jihadists, but the other factor is some of the actions I've taken on electronics in aircraft. That has caught everyone's attention, and we have nothing but renewed cooperation to share with us all the information they can. Even the EU has a new attitude towards this issue. So I think we're going in the right direction.
All right. Turning to cyber for a minute in Russia, Secretary, recent media reports have indicated that Russia targeted systems used in our elections in the waning days of the 2016 campaign. Clearly, we've seen a paradigm shift in Russia's using aggressive cyber means now to interfere with the elections of Western democracies. Is the department aware of these efforts, the new information that in the media reports that have come out recently?
Before I answer that, Congressman, I'd simply say I'm not acknowledging some of these things are very, very highly classified, as you know, so I'm not acknowledging anything that's being reported, whether it's true or not. But I am saying we are part of the cyber defense infrastructure of the United States and are aware, generally speaking, with our partners, FBI and others, of what the Russian attempts are.
Well, Secretary, if there's a classified answer that you need to give to that question, I expect to get that question.
We can do that.
Answered. Thank you. How is the department working with this critical infrastructure with respect to elections to improve the cybersecurity, particularly given the special elections that are going on now?
Well, as you know, and it's been pointed out to me by the vast majority of members of Congress I've spoken to, the states control, and in some cases inside states, there's no universal election process, but the states control that process. My predecessor, Jay Johnson, just before he left, designated the whole system as critical infrastructure. I've had a lot of pushback from members of Congress, both sides of the aisle. Governors have pushed back on that. The idea is, for the record, that is a voluntary, if you think we can help, come ask us and we'll try to help you. I'm meeting with all of the Homeland Security, I believe it's next week, the Homeland Security State Advisors. This will be a topic that we'll bring up about do they feel it's needed. But by no means do we have any intention, desire, or move to take over any state process or tell the states how to do business.
My time's expired. I have additional questions that I'll submit, but I'm particularly interested in that a classified answer to the Russian elections issue. Thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Barletta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Kelly, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for testifying again today. As usual, when we talk about illegal immigration, it's always talking about the illegal immigrant. During your previous testimony, I told you how pleased I was that the Trump administration created a new office to speak for the victims of crime committed by illegal immigrants. That's one of the reasons I feel so passionate about why we need to enforce our immigration laws. My city of Hazleton, which I was mayor of, had a serious illegal immigration problem that brought with them drugs, gangs, identity theft, other crimes, and I had to deal with that every day. Everyone talks about the illegal alien, but very seldom do we ever talk about the victims. No one has compassion for the victims of these crimes, and we must speak for them, and I'm thankful that the Trump administration is doing that. When I was mayor, I remember sitting with the family of Derek Kishline, a 29-year-old father of 3 little children who was shot and killed by head of the Latin Kings who was in the country illegally, arrested 7 times before he took the life of Mr. Kishline. I had to sit with Mr. and Mrs. Kishline. I met the family of Carly Snyder, a 20-year-old beautiful girl studying to be a veterinarian. Her father told me the story about his daughter. He was, her next-door neighbor was in the country illegally, arrested and left go arrested in a sanctuary city, left go. Breaks in his daughter's house and stabs her 37 times. As the father is telling me this, a tear's rolling down his cheek. He said, "I came to shake your hand because you're speaking for my daughter Carly now." I have never forgotten that. So I understand that there's nothing we can do to bring these people back. I know there's nothing that we could do that will ever relieve the pain that they still feel with. But I understand that the budget request includes funding with ICE to support the Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement Office, also called VOICE. And can you please speak about what you and the administration are doing to speak for the victims of crimes committed by illegal aliens against citizens and legal immigrants, and what else we can do in Congress to assist these efforts, and would it be helpful to have this office permanently authorized?
Thanks for that question, Congressman. The VOICE office, although it's been heavily criticized by certain elements, is not an anti-illegal, even illegal immigrant move. It is just a way to assist the victims of the families, primarily, of course, of the victims of some violence, some crime against perpetrated by an illegal alien. What we attempt to do is, and early on it was heavily abused by a lot of prank calls and all of this, but it's settled down now. By virtue of what I just said, it'll probably start back up. But there's plenty of examples of them calling in and simply, the person that killed my daughter, where is he right now, and where is he in the court process? Has he been sentenced to life or death like he should be, or has he gotten 20 to 40, or is he walked? And that's what we do to a large degree. Others will call and ask for counseling help and that kind of thing. We can take care of that in terms of direct them in the right direction. So I mean, I was kind of surprised. I've been surprised a lot of things since I've been in this job about the outcry against it, because it was billed as anti-immigrant, and of course we're not anti-immigrant. We're anti, if you will, illegal immigrant. We still take 1.1 million legal immigrants into this country every year, and I don't think there's any big idea to change that. But the point is, the VOICE office is working well, and it's just a way to outreach to people who felt as though they were all alone. And for every one of you as a mayor that was wrapping their arms around people, there's other mayors, with all due respect, that take the other view of illegal aliens.
Unfortunately, Secretary Kelly, we can't bring back their loved ones, and we can't maybe ease their pain, but what we can do is give these families closure. And I applaud the Trump administration for doing that. Thank you.
Mr. Keating is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your service to your country, your career service, and your sacrifices. It's much appreciated. This is a budget hearing, so I want to focus in on a couple of things that are important in my region. Number one, I want to continue the several-month dialogue our office has had with representatives from the Regional Office of Mission Support. We've been able to locate significant savings that will not result in a loss of personnel or services. Roughly, I believe, just in our small little region, $30 million in savings. And I think this could be a model that could be duplicated throughout the country, too, in terms of having those kind of savings. Along those lines, too, I'd like to just express a concern on the budget cuts to the Inspector General's office within Homeland, because I think that's an important office. It's important to this committee. And it's one for every dollar in, there's $7 in savings that's offset that. I think it's not a good time to be cutting in that regard. I'd also like to mention where hundreds of millions of dollars of revenues are being lost right now in our country, and particularly in my region. Something you never asked for, I'm sure, but in the omnibus legislative budget, you were given personal discretion over H-2B visas. And this is a program, as most of us know, it's really related to small businesses. Every day in my district and other districts around the country, the delay in filling those needed positions is just costing us revenues that could be helpful in fulfilling some of the things that are that are being cut right now. In our area, there'll be local workers that will not have jobs because, particularly people in the hospitality area, they're not opening at all during weeks because unless you're at a complement, you just can't do it. I've had conferences with the legal staff and with your office and the acting secretary in that regard that's dealing with that, Acting Director McCann. He and I discussed using the returning worker cap just being removed. Now, this is nothing new. This is something that 4 of the last 11 years has been utilized to have those people there. It eliminates some of the interviews. These people hit the ground running. And it's important right now in our country that we're not hurting our economy for something that can be easily done administratively. So I want to emphasize and ask you, when do you think you'll be able to start that process? It's overdue, and every day is costing us money in this country.
Well, first of all, Congressman, this is kind of a new topic for me. I would, when I originally saw it, 66,000, I think, is what is authorized, and then I think I have
Discretion to 129,000.
129,000. What I took from that was the sense of the Congress was not to expand it, because if it was that important, the Congress would have authorized 129,000. But that said, we're working with labor. You know, I have just as many, very large number of members of Congress saying don't expand it because it means American jobs, the unions, and all the rest of it. I'm open.
If I could interrupt,
Sure.
Mr. Secretary, there's a huge bipartisan support for this,
Right.
And may I respectfully say there's no U.S. jobs lost in this respect. These are jobs that, frankly, can't be filled. And I could tell you, as you're familiar with your own personal experience around the Boston area, the wages are well paid for in that area. It's not a question of not meeting wage. In fact, in my area, they exceed the average wages for those jobs. So this is, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's no security interest. These are returning workers. Some of them have been coming back and forth for 20 years. Those of us in the committee are well aware there's certain visas where people overstay those visas, and that's a matter of concern for you and for all of us. However, these people go back. They want to go back, and they have a history of going back and coming forward. As I said, some of them for decades working in the same the same businesses. So this is something I'm glad that with your feedback, because I hope I can alleviate that concern and get this moving as quickly as possible. I have about 10 seconds left to deal with things, but with the cuts, I just want to emphasize the UASI grants, the urban area security grants, those cuts concern me. The state homeland security grants are a concern as well. And we know from the Boston bombing experience how important that training was. And so I'd emphasize, as my colleagues have on both sides of the aisle today, to try and see if we can fund those. I think there will be states and cities that do not take the initiative to fund their portion the way it's structured now, and I don't think we can afford those cuts at this time. Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman's
Secretary.
time has expired. Mr. Perry's recognized.
Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Thanks for your service. Moving right into it, just recently, in the last couple of days, H.R. 366, the DHS SAVE Act, was signed into law by the President, which allows you to manage DHS's fleet much better than it was in the past and saves taxpayers a pile of money, I think. And I just want to let you know, as the chairman of the Oversight Committee, I'm interested in any priorities you might have that we haven't seen on rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse and getting right to that, and just offering myself to you in that regard. I have plenty of critics regarding the cost of the border wall and that discussion. And I just want to get into that a little bit. According to Bloomberg, the vast majority of heroin in the U.S. comes from Mexico, which is contributing to our devastating opioid epidemic, including in Pennsylvania, unfortunately. And I just want to use this one example as a cost of not securing the border, and just get your thoughts on if we've properly examined what the cost of not controlling our border is in that regard. Have we done that adequately? Do we know that cost?
Certainly not on my watch have we looked at that, but I would offer just a couple of facts and figures to you, and you're exactly right, Congressman. Everything, in a sense, everything that is bad in this regard comes up through the southwest border. I've talked to my Mexican friends about it. The reason why this network moves from Mexico is not because Mexicans are anything other than great people and very cooperative with us, but the immense amount of profit that comes out of the consumption of drugs in the United States, $800 billion by some estimates, is what generates all of the problems all the way south. You know, the demand generates the production and the transport. Just about 100% of the heroin consumed in the United States comes from Mexico. That's an indicator of how smart these cartels are. Years ago, it all came from Asia, not so many years ago. But they say, okay, if Americans want to kill themselves with heroin, well, then we'll help them out. And so they created the production facilities, the poppy growing, all that.
Do you know if you'll try and, if your agency will try and take a look at quantify that cost? I mean, I think it's important for Americans to know the cost. I mean, according to Pew, illegal immigration, maybe including heroin, maybe not itself, but illegal immigration costs Pennsylvania about $1 billion. So it's a significant cost, and just like to put your eye to that if you could. The President's budget request requires additional hiring of enforcement and removal operations. And I think it's a great start. I just am curious about your comments about how ICE can be effective with states and localities using sanctuary policies to stop them from doing their job, even with the additional personnel. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the best place for ICE to do its job is to work side by side with law enforcement in jails. We have a program for that. We pay for it. But if they're in the jails, an example would be someone who's an illegal alien is finished doing their time in jail, whether it's 1 year or 5 years, whatever. They simply turn them over to us, and then ICE sends them home. It's inconceivable to me why any elected official or anyone would not want us to do that. It's free. It gets someone who's very bad or bad out of their community. But you know, politics are politics, but that's the best way to do it. If we don't do it there, which is safer for the communities, safer for my officers, and cheaper, then the officers have to go out and find them. That means going into neighborhoods with the potential for violence. You know, knock wood, it's not very often, but occasionally there's some shooting, or going and go into courthouses. In other places. Of course, we don't do churches, medical facilities, schools. That's off the table. But it's crazy to me that elected officials out there in America would not want us working side by side with law enforcement to take these folks off their hands in the jail.
So let me just, this wasn't a question I had, but based on your comments then, it seems to me that potentially the $185.9 million request to hire additional enforcement and removal operation officers is a direct result of, to a certain extent, of certain cities or municipalities not cooperating with federal authorities. We have to have more of these folks because they're not in the prisons, because they have to go out and find them out on the street. Is that generally correct?
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay, well, that's a little unfortunate. Just finally, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, the temporary protected status, many of them designations expire in 2018. And I'm just wondering, is your department already in the process of reviewing the TPS countries and what factors you'll be considering when determining whether or not to redesignate those folks?
Yes, Congressman, we are.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yield.
The Chair, I ask unanimous consent the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bergman, be allowed to sit on the dais and participate in today's hearing without objections to ordered, sir. Chair now recognizes Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General Kelly, thank you for your service, and it's good to see you here. The state of New Jersey and the district I represent is in extremely close proximity to where the 9/11 attacks took place. Would you agree that our region, given its symbolic significance, our dense population and intensive economic activity, remains one of the highest security threats in the nation?
Yes, sir.
You know, by the Department of Homeland Security's own estimation, New Jersey has the most dangerous 5-mile stretch in the country, where the ports of Elizabeth and Newark, the Northeast Corridor Railroad, Newark Liberty National Airport, and the Garden State Parkway and the New Jersey Turnpike intersect. We are very concerned with respect with the proposed cuts to UASI, as Mr. King, the former chairman of this committee, mentioned, Mr. Keating, UASI grants, the port security grants, and the transit security grants to the elimination of 75% of the Viper teams and dramatic reductions in research and development activities related to protecting against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats at the Science and Technology Doctorate. This budget abandons my district, and we feel the country, while throwing money towards the construction of the border wall. You know, this budget and its cuts really terrifies me. How do we continue to keep the homeland safe with these dramatic cuts, and also support our first responders who've done an incredible job throughout the years? With these cuts, I don't understand how we can do both. Can you explain with this budget?
Well, of course, Congressman, the whole point initially of the many billions of dollars that was dispersed by the federal government to various municipalities came as a result, you know, clearly 9/11, and as good as the first responders were in New York City and here in Washington when the plane hit the Pentagon, we're in a different place now. And the idea, and of course I wasn't here, I was off fighting the war, but the idea was these grants would help municipalities train to these kind of threats and these catastrophes, buy equipment if they didn't have them already, and get them up to a certain point. And they are, I think you'd acknowledge that the law enforcement, the first responder community, certainly in your part of the world and I think throughout the nation, are in a different place today than they were 10, 13, 17 years ago. So now we're kind of in a sustainment phase to where they've bought the equipment that they think they needed, they've done the training, and at this point, the thinking is, not all, but the thinking is now that the states, the municipalities would pick up that sustainment. So that's kind of what the background thinking is on this.
Well, but, you know, and I'm sure, you know, from your vantage point, you know that the threats continue to evolve. And so the continuation of those grants and the need to continue to have our first responders equipped with the training and the equipment that they need to respond to this evolving threat continues. So just as the Army, the armed forces in this country continue to train and retrain, we feel that these grants need to stay in place because of that evolving threat.
Well, you could make the case, actually, on the evolving threat, as I see it, that as I mentioned a little earlier, every large city, small city, village, town, in a sense, is under threat as well because of the so-called homegrown lone wolf terrorists. I don't know how to fund to that. I think the possibility of a 9/11 type attack is not impossible, but I think fairly remote. But I think across our country, the domestic threat is everywhere, and I don't know how, again, to prevent it or train to it. The good news is we have tremendous law enforcement professionals that unfortunately get a lot of experience in dealing with this. But that's where the solution of this kind of threat is. In many of the grants, some of the grants have been reduced by certain amounts of money, and the idea is that the states would put their own money against it to sustain. But I don't know how to, going forward, how we address this, as you say, this current morphing of the threat, and it'll change again, and we'll adjust to it again.
Well, thank you, and I'll yield back at this time.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Katko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I want to honor you on your long and storied career in the military prior to continue your service in government with Homeland Security. I'm particularly mindful of your career now that I recently sworn my son as a second lieutenant, my oldest boy in the Army, and so I know it's the Army, I know. I tried to talk to him.
It's a pretty good outfit.
But it is it really brings to mind the tremendous sacrifices that our men and women in uniform do every day, and I sincerely appreciate that. I want to talk to you about a couple of bills that I've had passed the House that are in various stages with the Homeland Security, and I'd like to ask about them. First one, briefly, is the Northern Border Security Review Act, which mandates that Homeland Security complete a comprehensive threat analysis of the northern border by next week. I just want to know if you've had any preliminary indications from that and of what the findings are, and more importantly, whether we're going to have that soon, because my colleague, Ms. McSally, has graciously agreed to conduct a hearing with her committee and my input on this very topic in the not-too-distant future. So I think we could start with that one.
Well, Congressman, I'm confident that we will hit the 14 June date, but no, I have not been given any kind of preliminaries on this. We would expect it certainly within a few days, but my belief is we'll hit that mark.
Very fine, thank you. Now turning my attention to another bill, Counterterrorism Advisory Board Act of 2017 passed the House by unanimous support both from this committee and from the House as a whole. And it is over in the Senate, and several months ago, your office signaled to the Senate committee that's charged with dealing with that bill that they weren't ready to support it yet. Part of the signal was that you needed time to review it and see what you wanted out of the Counterterrorism Advisory Board, which I certainly understand. Have you been able to make any more determinations as to that bill?
If you wouldn't mind, sir, I'd like to take it for the record so I can give you a good answer. But as of right now, any effort to give me advice on issues like this would be welcomed. I don't know exactly what's in the bill, but if I could take it for the record, I'd get right back to you.
Sure, and just as a quick summary for you, it's a practice that's developed and is merely codifying the practice that's been developed over years at the Homeland Security. And it's something just seems to be common sense to make sure the agencies are talking together and not make it an optional thing, make it more of a mandatory thing that they are talking to each other, which of course in this day and age seems to be pretty common sense. So hopefully we'll talk about that. And now that I have a few minutes, I'd like to just kind of hear from you what your thoughts are about the procurement issues that seem to plague Homeland Security. And I'm very mindful of it in the context of the TSA subcommittee, which I chair. And that subcommittee, it's pretty clear that the procurement process still is lagging behind the technology that the bad guys are advancing. Obviously, the genesis of the laptop ban overseas was a result of technological advances that the bad guys are making. And my concern is that we still don't have a good process from the time an idea by a vendor is presented, especially if it's a new vendor, to the time it gets to the front lines. So if you could talk about that, I'd appreciate it.
I think it is a great question. I think I'd open it by saying one of the biggest shockers to me when I took this job was to find out how disparate a lot of things are. I came from the defense world, which procurement's not perfect, but there is a system, and it takes into account the needs of all of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and makes them work together for all the obvious reasons. I came to this job, and I was stunned at, frankly, how many people have a voice in how the department's run. I think we answer to 119 committees and subcommittees. I mean, it's almost an impossible task. But the point is, I know that Jay Johnson, just before he left, shortly before he left, put in this unity of effort thing, which I think procurement falls squarely under. Since I've been in the job, I've wanted to, directed the staff and the leadership to inject steroids into that process, to find ways to, across the department, solve some of these problems. Elaine Duke, who's my Senate confirmed, now the #2 in the department, has a lot of experience in this. She's taken this on by my direction to start to solve these issues, to include acquisition, procurement, and if there's a couple of people that we've nominated to come in to take over various positions. One of whom has a lot of DoD procurement acquisition experience, and I hope when she shows up, if she shows up, that we will start to get our arms around the problem. But you're right, the terrorists are agile, quick, and have unlimited resources to blow up airplanes. To counter those threats, it takes time and money to develop technology. We're not fast enough.
But the private sector there's a lot of technological advancements in the private sector, and the common refrain I hear from them is that it takes too long for them to get the attention of TSA or Homeland Security, and then it takes too long before that process, once they get their attention, to getting on the front line. So
trying to solve it.
Yeah, we have to get the best weapons out front. So thank you very much, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Watson-Coleman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning to you, Mr. Secretary. As you know, Mr. Secretary, based on security threats overseas, TSA has banned carry-on laptop computers from certain foreign airports and is reportedly contemplating expansion of that restriction, possibly to include some or all European airports. My question to you is two-pronged. What is the status of the laptop ban and possible expansion? And if implemented, how will DHS work with stakeholders and passengers to ensure a smooth transition to these new rules?
Well, before I even start, the ban was put in place, or the action was taken by me, not TSA. That was my decision, a very informed decision. So what brought me to that decision? A very, very real threat, very sophisticated threat, and not just one, emanating from the Middle East, to knock down one of our airplanes in flight. There's many ways to do that, and they try every day.
Mr. Secretary, can I just please
Sure.
interrupt you, because I agree with you. And so I'm not questioning.
No, I understand.
That this ban was put into place. I just want to know the status of it and the status of the expansion of it. But I'm not arguing the legitimacy of it.
No, but I just wanted to say that because this, believe me, I wrestle with this, and the committee needs to know that this is a very serious, constant threat to knock down an airplane. So the intelligence that I can't go into led me to make a decision that there were 10 last points of departure airfields that we thought were most at risk. It didn't have anything to do with where they were or what their religions were or all of that. It was that those places did not have the ability to detect this very sophisticated device, among other things. So where am I now? We are looking we're looking right now at an additional 71 airports, lots of points of departure. But that said, we're also working, and this has stimulated a lot more cooperation from our partners overseas. We're also looking at ways that we think we can mitigate the threat, not eliminate it, but mitigate it. So in an attempt not to be put on the ban list, if you will, many countries are leaning forward. We've had meetings with the EU. My deputy is going out to a large conference in Malta next week to present what we think are the minimum increased security standards. So whether we, and present those to people to say, if you meet these standards, we will not ban large electronics in the last point of departure airfield. Now that said, the other thing I'm trying to get my arm around, it doesn't fall into my lane, but I'm working with the Transportation Department. There are there's a lot of talk out there that lithium batteries are dangerous in and of themselves, that they just spontaneously burst into flame. Some will say, not much of a threat. Others will say it's a real threat. So with a lot more electronic devices in the cargo compartment,
Thank you.
is that more of a threat? So we're also dealing with that as well. So going forward, the plan is to say, these are the new minimum security things that you need to do at your airports. If you do that, then you can fly to the United States directly.
Thank you. I wait to be briefed even more when we go into our classified briefings. Thank you for that. I also know that our relationships with our European allies is very important here. So I look forward to your cautioning our president on the kind of tweets that don't necessarily facilitate the collaboration and cooperation we should be enjoying. There are a lot of problems that I've seen with this budget. One of them, one that particularly concerns me, is the 9% reduction to the Office of Inspector General. And I'm particularly interested in the fact that the IG is conducting an investigation of allegations of sexual misconduct by the CBP officers at the Newark Airport. Last month, Ranking Member Thompson and Congressman Payne and I sent the CBP a letter asking for some information, some update, and some additional information with regard to what they're doing about this issue. To date, we've not received any kind of response, not even we've received it, and we'll get back to you. So I'm glad to hear that you have every intention of responding to every members' questions and queries to your office. So I hope that you will go back and look into this. This letter is dated originally May 15th, and give us some idea as to when we could possibly receive a response. But my question beyond that is that I think that given the growth that you're proposing in your department, given these issues that are arising and other issues that are arising, how do you think the IG could continue to do its job to the degree that it needs to do it if its budget is cut by 9%?
Well, they can, everything they do, whether I ask them to do it or they come up on their own to do it, everything they do, of course, is prioritized. As an example, in the case you are talking about in Newark, and not presupposing the end result of that investigation, the first thing I did when I heard about it was ordered CVP to take action up there, not assuming anyone's guilt, just to take some action. And part of that action was to offer those who were reporting the fact that they were hazed in the way that they reported, to get them medical help or psychological help. It was counseling. So we did those things, and and the IG was right on it. There's probably any number of other things that I'd like the IG to look at, or he will decide what to look at on his own. But it's always a matter of prioritization, and obviously with a 9% cut, there'll be, we'll have to prioritize a little better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Mr. Secretary, thank you. I do think it is really important not only to look at what's happening in Newark, but perhaps there could be a problem of this nature at other airports, and it's something that you all really do need to get on looking into. And it still gives me pause that the IG's office, that I think is such an important function, should suffer this 9% decrease at a time when there are so many competing priorities that we're experiencing. I have a lot more questions. I mean, I have a real problem with what's happening with the Viper program, but I am out of time and I don't want to be gavelled, so I'm going to yield back to my chairman that I respect.
Very wise
Thank you.
decision. Thank you. Chair recognizes Ms. McSally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. First, I want to say it's good to see you again, and I know our staffs have been working together, and we've talked about this. My first question is about the Douglas Port of Entry. As you know, built in 1933, woefully inadequate. 7.6 million people went through last year. 3.2 million cars, $4 billion of economic activity, and as you know, 90% of the hard drugs are coming through the ports of entry. So where is the modernization of the Douglas Port of Entry on your 5-year plan? We know it's in there, but can we see where it might be? Is it going to be next year? Where in that 5-year plan? And then the new commercial port of entry project. I know the administration is talking about large infrastructure projects. I also want to know whether you're talking to them about including ports of entry in infrastructure discussions, because these are so vital for economic development and also for security.
Congresswoman, so I don't guess on the first question. Let me take it for the record, and I'll get back to you in writing. On the second issue, part of, as I say, I think you, I'm sure you were here when I took my guidance from the president very early on about the southwest border. Yes, secure it, but have it open to legal movement and all. And there are many places, in fact, all places, I would argue right now, at all the ports of entry, we need to improve so that we can facilitate faster movement. We have some great innovative things to even speed it up more with facial recognition technology, that kind of thing, working with the Mexicans and as well as the Canadians in terms of how we can pre-clear that kind of thing. So yes, I mean, all of the ports of entry need to be upgraded, actually going both ways, south and north.
Right. Is this going to be part of the larger infrastructure initiative coming out of the
I
administration?
don't know what they're thinking about, but certainly this would be, in my view, part of the secure the border initiative that I'm dealing with.
Okay, well, I believe it needs to be. I've talked to Secretary Chu about it. I would love to maybe follow up to make sure that that voice, if we're talking infrastructure, it's not just roads and bridges, which are important, but it's also these ports of entry.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And I want to follow up on the DACA issue. While I don't agree with kind of how it was done from roles and responsibilities of the branches of the government, the reality is that we're dealing with real people. These kids who were brought here to the country at no fault of their own as children, as you know. In Arizona, there's 57,000 of them. And because of the program, they came forward to the government. They gave their personal information, where they live, their biometric data, their fingerprints. They went through a background check. They've graduated from high school. They've served in the military. And I agree with you that we need to come up with a legislative solution here to address this issue, and I'd urge our colleagues to do that. I think Carlos Curbello's bill is a good place to start, and I really think we need to move that forward. But in the meantime, uncertainty certainly brings fear to my constituents that are in this limbo. Can you assure my constituents who are in this place, until we solve this legislatively, that they are going to be protected and that they're not having to worry about it?
As I've said many, many, many times on this topic, we are not targeting DACA recipients. But that said, I'm not going to let you off the hook. You've got to solve this problem. A different man in this job, or woman, might have a different view of it. I'm not going to let the Congress off the hook. You've got to solve it. A different person in this job might have a different view.
Got it. And I agree with you. Again, I want to urge our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to deal with reality, forget about ideology or how we got here, but now we're dealing with reality, and we got to solve this problem based on what's practical and what's compassionate, and also upholding the rule of law and the precedent. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have a bill coming before the floor today related to staffing issues, the shortages that you have both in the CBP officers and Border Patrol. Again, this has nothing to do with increases. We've been working with the last administration on this. You're 1,000 short in the blue suiters and 1,800 short in the green suiters, and this is impacting, again, lanes being closed, security and economy being impacted. Can you talk to me about, whether you support our bill to fast track our veterans and those who served honorably in law enforcement to give them an opportunity to, to get hired quicker, and then also assure my colleagues who maybe not supporting my bill that you have strong anti-corruption measures in the department, that in the hiring process, going through a Tier 5 background check, like an SSBI, like we went through, but also when on the job, that there are strong anti-corruption measures to make sure that everybody's doing their job correctly.
I mean, there are strong anti-corruption measures. We have internal looks all the time to see, and to see if there's any shenanigans. Every now and again, unfortunately, someone will get caught doing something, but it's not the one or two that are caught. It's the tens of thousands that do their job every day without doing anything wrong. But really, anti-corruption starts with who you hire. And so we have to maintain the standards, vetting and all the rest of it. It is an amazing thing to me that it's easier to join the U.S. Armed Forces than it is to be a CVP or an ICE officer.
Right.
In fact, the vast majority of the people in, let me say in many, many places that I deal with couldn't qualify couldn't be vetted to be so they're very, very good people, occasionally bad ones, but we take care of that through the law or through just getting rid of them. But I do support anything that would speed up the process, so long as we don't skimp on the quality and the vetting to put more men and women to work.
Thank you. We did get a letter of support from your department and also the National or the Non-Commissioned Officers Association, Fraternal Order of Police, and others. Again, this is people who have already been vetted, who are going to have to go through background check as well. So I appreciate that, and thanks, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary.
Chair recognizes Ms. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. On March 7th, I sent a letter to you and the department asking for information about several provisions of the President's executive order, otherwise known as the travel ban, and I have yet to get a response. And it was about a specific provision within the EO that was not subject to the TRO issued by the court. So I don't think there is an impediment in that regard. Now, I say this without criticism. I am just, but with a deep appreciation for how incredibly busy you are. Now, fast forward, I have subsequently sent a letter requesting similar information, obviously of an agency information, to OPM regarding cybersecurity and how we hire cybersecurity experts. And I was specifically told by OPM that the new policy is that the agency is no longer going to respond to individual requests by individual Congress members, but only by chairmen or chairwomen of committees. What I'm asking, now I'm dealing with that, trying to figure that out. They have said that that is the new policy, and I am asking you if that is the policy of Homeland Security as well.
We have discretion, so it's not the policy. As I say many, many times, I will answer as fast as I can any question, so long as it's not pre-decisional. My legislative affairs guy is right behind me here. I'm a little bit angry the fact that you wrote a letter that you haven't received a response back to. So how about by Friday latest? I'll answer that. I'll answer your original letter.
Well, I appreciate
apologize.
that. No. As I said, without criticism, it's with total understanding of how incredibly busy you are. But I just wanted to get the answer as to whether or not you agree with OPM or you have the same kind of policy within
I
your
believe I have
agency.
discretion to deal with the United States Congress in the legal way, and my thinking on that is to lean forward and do the best I can to keep you all informed.
But that's me as a lowly member, not as a chairwoman, right?
That's you as a lowly
Okay,
member.
great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 2 weeks ago, Mr. Secretary, that we spent some time with the police commissioner of the New York City Police Department and the Manhattan DA.
Jimmy O'Neill.
Jimmy O'Neill, great guy. And he specifically spoke about the UASI funding. And the chairman and he's not here now, but Congressman King were there as well. I just ask, I mean, look, New York City is under a different responsibility because we've got to protect the first family, and that's coming with no help from the federal government. I'm hoping that that's going to change.
That has changed.
That has changed. Okay, great. Losing the UASI funding would result in, and this is according to Commissioner O'Neill, they would have to cut 600 officers who played a vital role in protecting New York City. That's including Trump Tower. So just, I'm making a pitch for you to advocate with us. It would help for you, and I don't know if you don't think that this is your position, but I think that you are uniquely qualified to advocate for maintaining, if not increasing, those levels as opposed to cutting them, number one. And I also just want to throw in that the nonprofit security grant program that falls under UASI is more important than ever given the hundreds of Jewish community centers, the JCCs and synagogues that were threatened around the country. I have one of the largest Jewish communities in the country. So I would just, and obviously if UASI is cut, then that's probably going to go as well. So I would just throw in a pitch for that and for your advocacy on that issue as well. A quick question on border apprehensions. They are at an all-time low, but we've also now recently seen a spike in people being deported who have zero criminal records. It appears that this administration has done away with enforcement prioritization for ICE, which vastly expands the number of individuals that are priorities for removal. I just want to ask you, does ICE have a goal for the number of deportations this year, number one? And number two, of the approximately 75% of ICE arrests that have prioritized criminals, quote-unquote criminals, how many have been at annual check-ins for individuals under orders of supervision with status-based offenses? Otherwise, people who have maybe had a minor infraction but are complying with the court-ordered requirements, law enforcement requirements. What percentage of the 75% are those people?
I'll do this quick as I can. I'd ask the chairman for a little bit of time to go over the Congresswoman's time here. As far as ICE goes, ICE is working, they have no quotas. They're limited only by the number of officers that they go to work every day, and they go to work every day and work hard. They are focusing, as I've mentioned so many times, on people who are here illegally and are criminals. Now, criminals are, that's a relative term, but are criminals. Now, some individuals will, illegal individuals will fall into their hands. As an example, if they go to a house, knock on the door, there's 5 people there. One is the guy they're after, and 2 others are illegal. And they'll take them into custody. They put them in the process. They're usually out in an hour or 2, and then they're entered the process, which is obviously or oftentimes very lengthy until they get either deported or allowed to stay here. So that's one group. That's what ICE does. The other group would be CVP picks someone up on the border, as an example. They're illegal, turn them over to ICE. ICE then processes them, and then they go into a process. What the stories you hear that someone was here for 8 years, hasn't done anything wrong, and all of that, and then has an order to be deported. That's done by the immigration judges / Justice Department, immigration judges, and in federal courts. So I was just looking at one the other day. It was a 16-year-long process. Yes, he was here 16 years, but at the end of the process, a judge says, you're going back to where you came from. We have no discretion. And even if I had discretion, if you've gone through the lawful process that this institution has passed, and at the end of that process, a federal judge or an immigration or whoever judge says, you're out of all your appeals. This is years long. You're out of all your appeals. You have to go home. Then ICE takes them into custody and deports them. So that there's 2. The second category, those people may never have done anything wrong, but they went through the entire process, and the judge says deport them, and we can't ignore that. It's a federal judge or an immigration judge. So that's the 2 categories of people. ICE is looking for people who are here illegally and are criminals. That's their priority, and they have no quota.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Mr. Chairman, just 30 seconds, your indulgence. Just going back to the UASI thing, I can't accept that this money is just to bring people up here and then we're leaving you in the lurch. New York City is one of the highest taxed states in the country. And what I hope from a law enforcement perspective is we want to encourage agencies like the NYPD, which are under constant pressure, as you pointed out, New York City being one of the biggest targets, to always have the best technology and staying one step ahead and foiling all of the innumerable plots that they have. The federal government cannot be saying to these states and these law enforcement agencies that you're on your own. We just can't do that. This is a bipartisan. I mean, it's a multi-governmental investment, I think, that we need to make. And I hope that the chairman agrees with me. Thank you very much for your indulgence, and thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
Sorry, I wasn't on. They're by no means on their own. They're not in the lurch. They're very, particularly a place like New York, they're very, very good at what they do. We're still funding to a very, very high level there. So that's.
They're good with the federal government's help, for sure. Thank you.
Mr. Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, very good to see you again, and I particularly appreciate, I want to mention again your comments last night at the tribute to the U.S. Coast Guard, your clear support for the United States Coast Guard and the work that the men and women there do, and I really appreciate that, particularly because I represent the Port of Jacksonville, Florida, Northeast Florida, which moved 8.2 million tons of cargo last year and is one of only 16 on-call U.S. ports authorized to move military cargo in support of our national security operations. So I'm very attuned to their needs, and really, like many members who represent ports, we have great concern that these ports actually become the Trojan horse, if you will, to our national security. And I want to ask you about the 20% cut to the Science and Technology Directorate, which will eliminate the chemical and cargo security projects, and yet on the other side, I see where we're putting $109 million into non-intrusive inspection equipment for marine facilities, and I want to make this comparison between our capabilities for detection at ports and airports. In the same kind of concern where we see this development of technology by those who wish to kill us, the same evolutions that we see on laptops, for example, we can see in ports. And I just wonder why we're cutting 20% in our science and technology.
Well, as they looked at it, and this is obviously a work in progress, Congressman, but as they looked at it, there are, we believe, other laboratories developing technologies that we can plug into, whether they're kind of government laboratories or, frankly, many of the solutions, as you know, comes from the commercial sector, who come in and say this is a great new idea, a great new widget, and we can simply purchase it. So the idea is that we would rely on, again, other laboratories doing similar work, so we'd cut out the redundancy. As far as the ports go, for sure, we can't take our eye off of that, mostly because of contraband that comes in. And I've been down to Port of Miami, a few other places. I got to get down to Jackson. I used to live down there. It's a great community, and see, but they're actually, it's pretty sophisticated, as you know, not just the technology that looks into these containers, but why specific containers are taken aside. And this goes to the issue of intelligence collection, not only here in the United States, but down in with our partners, and the patterns through which that particular container may have moved until it made it to Jacksonville. So they're actually pretty good at that. But it's mostly contraband drugs or whatever that come through that way. The destructive type efforts by the terrorists, unless they get an atomic bomb or an ability to make a dirty bomb, which, knock wood, right now, we're confident they don't have that right now. But the smaller devices to get on an airplane and blow it down, it takes a tiny amount of explosive in the right place to do that. So, but I share your concern about the ports.
Okay, and look, I know that you're committed to technology. I see where we're making some emphasis on the Rio Grande Valley. I'm really glad to see that a small number of us had an opportunity to travel the southern border. And I tell you, what's going on at Fort Huachuca with the big pipe and the technology and the organization that's going on there is incredible. And if you can reproduce that over in the Rio Grande Valley, I think you'll really see some great benefits. Sure. What concerns me when we talk about a wall, I like to let folks know, look, it's not a barrier, it's just an impediment. And when that breach occurs, and it will, because they're going to go over, around, through, then we have to have the resources, the staff to respond to that and capture these folks before they infuse into the country. Can you talk briefly about how you intend to bring on those roughly 6,000 CBP members that we're going to need? When you have a hiring process, it was at 460 days for processing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard, 460 days to hire people, many of whom are coming out of law enforcement or the military. Exactly. I mean, the best people on the planet. That, I'm told now, we have that process down, and we're moving it down every day, down to less than 200 days, I think down in the 150-day. We think we can get it down into the kind of 60, 90-day, and it takes that long for background checks and all that kind of thing. And we'll maintain the quality of the human material that comes in, and we'll maintain the training, and I'm not going to skimp on that. That's a huge mistake when you do those kind of things. Exactly. The U.S. military, I can give you chapter and verse how many times in the past we grew too fast and then suffered consequences because we lowered the quality. So we'll get to whatever number we can as fast as we can, but never skimping on quality and training. I told them all I'd fire them if they did either one of those two things. And that applies to hiring of the ICE personnel as well.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We have 30 minutes left, and we have 6 members. If we could do it 5 minutes each, we can be on time. Mr. Correa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair McCall and Member Ranking Thompson for holding this information hearing. And Secretary Kelly, I want to thank you very much for your commitment to keeping our citizens safe in this country, and of course, your service to our country. Thank you, sir. Very quickly, talking about cybersecurity, I'm pleased to see that $971 million has been requested by the President for cybersecurity. I'm one of the believers that the best defense is a good offense, and we do have to build up our cybersecurity capabilities, as we've all learned recently. That's why I'll be introducing a bill today that will call on the Department of Defense to update its cyber strategy and require the administration to draft a strategy for offensive cybersecurity capabilities, and of course to authorize the expansion of our internet cyber cooperation with our NATO allies. Given all of this activity in cyber, where do you think there's a challenge? Will we have a challenge in staffing up trained individuals that can deal with cybersecurity?
Well, the challenge, of course, you know this, Congressman, that you're so very aware of it and up on the topic. The challenge is the enemy, the bad guys. We deal with, as you well know, with nation states, terrorist organizations, and just vandals, if you will, that just enjoy doing these kind of things. I would offer to you very quickly that in the malware case of a few weeks ago, we saw that development. DHS saw that developing in Europe, and very quickly the U.S. government went to general quarters, if you will, on it. And it was really amazing to me to sit in the sit room with NSA, FBI, and dozens of other people on the phone, to include my own cyber warriors. And it was really not only DHS, but DHS in the lead to defend our shores from that, attack. And when you consider, and we watch it spread Europe, Middle East, all the way out to Asia, hundreds of thousands of systems contaminated, and DHS, along with all the other efforts by the U.S. government in the cyber world, managed to keep that threat, that infection overseas, with the exception of 8, I believe, machines. An amazing thing. But that said, we can't rest because they're at it every day. So the great news is we have NSA out there fighting the away game in terms of cyber. And at home here, we have some great folks, FBI, and not DHS for sure, and not to mention our collaboration, our partnership with the public sector, and the help we get from Microsoft and others. So it's a pretty good news, but we can't rest on our laurels. You're
And
exactly
Mr.
right.
Secretary, look forward to working with you to see how we're going to be bringing in fresh recruits, cyber-trained
Yep.
warriors, so to speak, to help us in this effort, because we're going to be pumping a lot of resources into this effort. Just want to make sure that's not our bottleneck.
Right.
If I may shift very quickly to the border security. As many of my colleagues have stated, we do have a limited treasury, so to speak. Not to repeat what's already been said here today, but in my trip to San Ysidro recently, a lot of your folks are telling me, like one of my learned colleagues said here, the vast majority of drugs, human trade, happens with vehicles, through vehicles, ports of entry. Coast Guard Commandant here a few weeks back said that they were lacking resources. Commandant told us that, testified that last year he identified 580 targets that they knew were carrying drugs into the U.S., but could not interdict them because, in fact, they lacked the resources. Then you look at most of the cocaine, of course, 90% of it comes in through ships. There appears to be an emerging trend now that a lot of the drugs are beginning to go through Canada, easier ports to come in and then go south. Then one of my colleagues, many of my colleagues said today, funding for local funding, federal local funding of our public safety officers. Had a local police chief that approached me this last week saying, Lou, you got to do something about this. We rely on those federal grants to secure our communities, to make sure that we're working with the feds to stop any of those, locally grown threats. So all of these, factoids out there, limited treasury, can we still look at a border wall as being the best place to invest our resources to protect our citizens?
The border barrier is a place this is a multifaceted problem. It starts, frankly, once again, with drug demand in the United States. We don't do anything about it. But if we were to reduce that, that would reduce many of the problems we're dealing with here. But the border barrier, backed up by technology and people, is only one part of the solution. But I would offer to you, sir, that once the drugs get into Mexico, and they're broken down into smaller, well, a better way to put it, once they get to within a few hundred miles of the southwest border in Mexico, the cartels break them down into really, really relatively small amounts, and then the defenses on the border, the ports of entry, are just overwhelmed with thousands of cars, perhaps, and trucks where this stuff is carried. If you look further south, and we are doing that, last year, with all of our cocaine consumption comes from is Colombia. Great, our #1 partners in the hemisphere. They get 417 tons of cocaine before it ever left their country, and destroyed 4,000 drug labs before it ever produced cocaine. And then the United States, a better way to put it, the U.S. military effort got, I think last year, 217 tons in the flow. Various partners, Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, got 15, 18, 25 tons apiece. Once it gets into the United States, the entire law enforcement effort to go after cocaine, and I'll use that example, it's 1 million law enforcement professionals. They only get 10 tons. So once it gets in or close to the border, if we're only relying on that, which we're not, if we're only relying on that, we've lost. That's why efforts down south. Now, what the Coast Guard Commandant will tell you is, yes, when I was in Southcom, I had an incredible, and we do today, have an incredible clear picture of the movement, and I'll use cocaine as the example, but it takes ships to interdict them. So if we were to interdict, for every ship you send down there, whether it's a Coast Guard cut or Navy ship, and we haven't seen a Navy ship down there in 2 years, for every ship that goes down there, we can tell you how much cocaine that'll take out of the flow. Heroin's a different story, methamphetamines are a different story, but that's a great partnership with the Mexicans, and they're getting after the poppy production, and they're getting after the heroin production. We help them with that. We don't help them on the ground, we help them find it. And methamphetamine as well. Just a couple of months ago, they found one, we helped them find the other one, huge methamphetamine labs that they destroyed. So that's where really that you take the lion's share of this flow in the tonnages, but once it's on close to the southwest border, it's in.
Gentleman's
yield,
time's
Mr.
expired. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again. If there's one thing that keeps me awake at night, it's the visa waiver program. And every visa decision we make is a national security decision. There's currently 38 countries on the waiver program initiated back in the late 80s with the UK, I believe. I believe we had about 19 million travelers just last year alone on the program. And it's a sense its inclusion is decided by a number of factors, including the Human Development Index. We live in a very different world now in 2017 from a national security standpoint than existed back in the 80s and 90s as the program has continued to expand. Unfortunately, terrorism is no longer a regional threat, it's a global threat. And there's a lot of very good people that live in really tough places, and there's also a lot of really bad people that live in really nice places like Paris and Munich and Copenhagen and Brussels and the like. And do you think it's time that we need to rethink our participation in that program as a nation, given the threats that we face in 2017?
I think, Congressman, it makes sense to upgrade what we're doing. The good news is in all of those countries, as you know, they have police and backgrounds and background checks and databases and all that. And by the way, I think I said earlier, I don't know if you were here, that because of things that have happened in Europe recently and my move to ban large electronics in the passenger compartments of airplanes, have got them really enthusiastic about increasing their cooperation in coming up to the U.S. standards. Some of them are already there. Many of the visa waiver countries are there. In fact, that we use the same kind of criteria. But there are, as you know, we're pretty strict about visa waiver. I mean, even our great partner, Israel, as good as they are at what they do, cannot qualify, and there's other European countries as well. But it is worth looking at it for sure. The one thing about the visa waiver program, if a terrorist was able to get on a U.S.-bound aircraft, we still have very, very good procedures to ensure, not guarantee, but to ensure that that individual is not carrying a bomb or a gun. So when he gets to the United States, he is now in the United States without a bomb or a gun. And as you know, I think we're very, very good, particularly our great FBI and law enforcement people. We've got networks such as they are under control. That doesn't take away the lone wolfers now. So we're in good shape, but it's worth looking at it. We are going to look at it. I have my number 2 going out to Malta next week for a very large conference on this issue to include the electronics ban that I implemented in 10 airports. So I'm with you, though, on the concern.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And if there's anything this committee can do to assist, please let us know because it's very important.
Sure will.
Second, I have 2 minutes left here. It's good that we're increasing the budget for DHS this year. That's definitely needed. It is being drawn back in a couple of areas that are concerning, as was mentioned here, FEMA and also the OIG. OIG, I think for every dollar spent, that's going to result in a cost savings. If we can expand its scope, if we can expand its numbers, expand its budget, since its mission is to cut back on fraud, waste, and abuse, ultimately, I believe that will streamline and save money. So to the extent that you could advocate for that, I think that would be a good idea.
Yes, sir.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Demings from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary. It's good to see you again. During 9/11, I was assigned to the Orlando International Airport as a police captain, and I was also the vice president of the International Association of Airport and Seaport Police. So I had an opportunity to work with law enforcement all over the world, our federal partners, airport authorities, to restore trust and ensure the safety of the traveling public. In other words, Secretary Kelly, as you know, we have come a long way in this country. and it would be a shame if we allowed ourselves to go back. We had, as you know, recently the shooting in Fort Lauderdale, also had an incident in Los Angeles. And I think there's no greater time when we need law enforcement presence in our airports. However, in President Trump's budget, he proposes a cut to the LEO reimbursement program, which would take law enforcement officers away from our exit lanes and other places. How would you, working with the TSA, guarantee that there's really not a diminish in law enforcement presence in our airports?
Well, I think the expectation is that, well, let me back up and say every time I talk about doing something security-wise in airports, I immediately get calls from mayors in the airport industry to say, hey, don't do that because this airport generates unbelievable amounts of money for this community, this city, whatever. So that's.
I remember those days,
Yeah.
but 9/11 kind of changed that response too. It's a shame we're kind of going back to that concern, but.
But that said, as you know, the TSA, not really a law enforcement organization, no arrest and all of that. Clearly, that's a state and local responsibility. And we have taken, I would say, TSA, because they're not law enforcement and a lot of other reasons, have taken on things in the airports that is probably inappropriate for them. I don't believe TSA should be made law enforcement. They do a very, very good job at what they do. So the idea is that where we can't secure doors and things like that, then the expectation would be that the local law enforcement would take that responsibility. Because ultimately, they in fact have the law enforcement responsibility in the building or on the facility.
So then resources would not be available, though, to supplement funding for those officers, and you would ask local jurisdictions to assume that within their budgets.
And that's where we are now.
Okay. I know you've heard this term many times. I have to say it again, especially being from Orlando, regarding the URASI funding. As you know, Orlando now has the unfortunate distinction of being home to the deadliest mass shooting. We're almost at the 1-year mark where, you know, a lone wolf terrorist walked into a nightclub, killed 49 people and injured many, many more. Law enforcement, under the circumstances, I think did a unbelievable job on that night, but we know that they're also responsible for the 1.2 million residents who live in their community, as well as 68 million people who visit Orange County every year. And so could you, and of course, Orlando is not on the list to receive funding. So could you, Secretary Kelly, talk a little bit about the methodology? What are some of the things that you look at? It's a little bit confusing that a place that's so responsible for so many people with the deadliest mass shooting is not on that list. So could you talk a little bit about the methodology?
I think you know this. The way we determine the risk is it's a congressional program, and then DHS, FEMA plug in various factors, and then that comes out with what municipalities are considered to be higher risk and lower risk. And so when we did that this year, and it has to do with population and a lot of other things, DOD facilities, critical infrastructure, and all of that goes into the formula as set by the Congress. And Orlando didn't come out high enough to get funding.
I know that the administration is also looking at a cost sharing of 25%, I believe.
Right.
If a jurisdiction is unable to meet that amount that is on the list, will those funds be reallocated? And if so, what is the formula for that?
Yeah, I think the expectation is they will be able to meet it. It's an important thing. 25% doesn't seem like an unreasonable amount.
But if for some reason they were not able
that
to
would be
meet it,
their decision.
would those funds be reallocated to another jurisdiction?
We would, you mean all of the funds, the 75%?
Would another city then move up to be on that list?
That's not the way, I don't believe, I'll get back to you. I don't believe that's the way it works.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr.
Generally
Chairman. I
yields
yield
back, and
back.
Mr. Higgins is recognized.
Higgins.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garrett is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Kelly, for your indulgence. And I will tell you that some of these questions might seem really easy, and it might be because they are. So I would start off by querying whether $44.1 billion is greater than $42.4 billion.
It is.
Okay. And so would it be reasonable to suggest to anyone decrying a massive slashing of the Homeland Security budget is being hyperbolic, if not maybe even more sort of Chicken Little-ish, if I were to suggest that?
Right. No.
Okay. And so what we've actually seen with this budget is a reappropriation of Homeland Security dollars, correct?
Right.
And in fact, that reappropriation was done with the intent of securing to the best of our ability, with finite resources, the Homeland within the purview and scope of this particular portion of the budget?
Yeah, that was the intent.
Yes, sir. And let me ask you another question that might seem easy. It seems so to me. Is securing our southwest border important to Homeland Security?
It's very important.
Okay. And is building a barrier in areas where it's practicable and where there aren't terrain or remoteness situations that cause it to be unnecessary important to securing our southwest border?
Barriers, physical barriers backed up by people and technology are critically important to secure the border.
Yes, sir. And so generally speaking, and I understand this is a broad generalization, is it easier to stop attackers? Let's use the paradigm that you described with cocaine seizures on the site of production versus inside the United States versus man-hours, manpower, and dollars spent. Is it easier to stop would-be evildoers prior to entering the country or after they're already in the country?
Prior to entering is the way to do it.
And so that might be a reason that someone might prioritize securing our borders.
That's one of the prime reasons.
Okay. Changing the subject somewhat tangentially, but I think certainly related. Do you, and I don't know the answer to this one for a change, do you know if operator license, driver's license applicants are screened against the TSDB?
I would have to take that for the record, right?
I would love for you to.
I believe so, but let me take it for the record.
Well, if you could, that'd be wonderful and greatly appreciated. I think it's a relevant question. Because I think then the next question becomes, if we use the TSDB against operators license, driver's license applicants, and not against, but to screen, right? Name, date of birth, social security number. Is that also done in states that issue operators licenses to undocumented immigrants? That is, resident permits, et cetera.
I'd have to get back to you.
Okay,
But I will get back to you.
And I'm not trying to make you look bad. These are, I think.
These are way down in the guts of the department, but.
Yes, sir, and I can see that on the front end. I always wonder what we can do in this body to help you do what I believe you at your word are trying to do, and I'm walking down that road here a little bit. Are you familiar with the IAFIS, the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System?
Yeah.
And are you familiar with the fact that the vast bulk of data gathered through the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System is submitted to the FBI voluntarily? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you know, or could you have someone get back to us on whether states that, or cities or states that exercise sanctuary policies actually collect and voluntarily submit fingerprint data on individuals they believe to not be here as legal residents?
I will get back to you, but I doubt it. I very much doubt that.
Wouldn't that?
I mean, the cooperation is pretty poor when they get into this sanctuary city thing.
And so might it not put our nation at risk if we have a locality that decides not to submit fingerprints on identified criminal suspects or theoretically criminals because they choose not to voluntarily coordinate with the FBI's fingerprint system?
There's no doubt, Congressman, the more we have in the database, the better we are in terms of identifying bad actors, whether they're terrorists or criminals.
And that would be my next question, and that is, the bad actors that we catch might not just be habitual drunk drivers who certainly have the ability to impact horror, but potentially foreign extremist terrorist elements as well.
No doubt.
Okay, I got 38 seconds. Let's see what we can do. On cyber defense, do you know how many different government entities play a role, ballpark?
A large number, but I think, in terms of the non-defense, non-intelligence kind of effort, DHS is the overall coordinator within the government.
Yes, sir, and which is why I'm asking you for your reassurances that the coordination between these entities is important. Obviously, you're well aware that prior to 9/11, one of the problems that we learned of afterwards was that we had some intelligence, but the left hand wasn't talking to the right. Will you ensure me that you're doing everything you can to make sure that information is cross-channeled on cyber and that we're also coordinating with the private sector? And that's
Absolutely, and as I just described briefly, when I saw that, when I was in the Situation Room watching the spread of that malware, it was really comforting to me at how many people in our government were all coordinating and had been from the minute they detected the fact that there was an attack. Really
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And that was a real success.
It was really something to watch, yeah.
I was very proud.
I had no idea we were that good. I mean, collectively, all of us.
They're getting better.
Yeah.
Ms. Berrigan from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the American Association of Port Authorities expressing their priorities such as addressing CBP, seaport staffing issues, and fully funding port security grants crafted by its security committee, of which the Port of Los Angeles is part of and which I am proud to represent.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here today to answer our questions. I watched some of your testimony yesterday before the Senate, and you said something that I completely agree with. You talk about the men and women that put their lives on the line every day to protect our homeland, and we have to invest in them. And I couldn't agree with you more, and wanted to. It reminded me of a trip I took this weekend with some of my colleagues. Went down to Tijuana, Mexico, and we went down there. And who we visited were veterans that have been deported. I know that the 2018 budget includes millions of dollars to ramp up deportations. And I want to take a minute to talk about the deportations of our veterans. You know, these are soldiers who have saved lives. These are soldiers, some of who have given their lives. Soldiers who have put service and country above self, many times not even their own country. And they are there to fight and to protect us and America from our homeland. I see them very similar as the men and women who serve in DHS to protect our homeland and our safety. Mr. Secretary, are you aware that non-citizens who sign up to serve in our armed forces are able to go to war and they become automatic citizens if they are killed in the line of duty?
I am aware of the program that you're referring to, sure.
And are you aware that veterans that are deported are later brought back by the U.S. government to the U.S. when they die, and they're buried here with full military honors?
Well, it depends on the character of service, but sure, I'm aware of that.
Do you think it's right that our veterans have to come back in body bags to be able to come back to this country for which they fought for?
It's not as simple as that. I mean, the people you're referring to, and of course, I don't believe under my watch, and this is only by happenstance, but under my watch, we've deported any in this category, I don't think. So the rest of them were deported previously. But the point is, there's a great program. In fact, since October 2001, over 118,000 foreigners have joined the U.S. military and been naturalized to be U.S. citizens. They still have to go through, the moral and that kind of background checks. But the point is, if they do a year of honorable service, during that period, they can request to go through the process of naturalization. And all things being equal, they don't have to wait a long period of time. They will be made U.S. citizens. If they're made a U.S. citizen, of course, then they wouldn't be deported because they're U.S. citizens. In the case, as I understand, in the cases of the individuals that have been deported, yes, they served in the U.S. military. And again, character service counts a lot here. But the point is, they got out of the U.S. military, did not request to become citizens for whatever reason, and there's a number of reasons they might not have, and then they committed crimes and were apprehended and deported.
Okay, well, I won't argue with, I could argue with some of that not being accurate, but I only have about a minute left. You know, one of the individuals that I saw was a gentleman named Hector Barajas, who happens to be one of my constituents, who started the deported veterans home, the support home. And he just got a pardon from the governor. And is somebody who I think would be a great example of somebody that we can now look at to grant citizenship for the 6+ years that he put in. He got 2 Medal of Accommodations from the Army. I hope that your agency will certainly give serious consideration to his application. But you mentioned the program. You know, in 2010, there was an agency-wide ICE memo instructing field agents to use their discretion to, quote, whether the person or the person's immediate relative has served in the U.S. military, reserves, or National Guard, with particular consideration given to those who served in combat. Is ICE still using this directive to use that discretion, or is that one of those that you've wiped away?
They still use that discretion. I was just talking to the ICE, the head of ICE yesterday about this, and yes, they still use that.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Bergman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to join this hearing today. Mr. Secretary, great to see you, and it sounded, in your testimony sounded like a MAR4 North, MAR4 South update, right. So thank you for that. On May 5th, the President signed the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2017 into law. The law contained a measure to provide relief to seasonal businesses in the form of nearly 70,000 additional H-2B visas. Have you given the go-ahead to begin this process?
No.
Okay. Why not? And when do you plan to initiate the process? And what can Congress do in the short term to assist?
Probably not. Well, let me back up and say I wish Congress had not given me the 66,000 option. My sense was when I first took this job, if Congress had wanted it to be 129 or whatever thousand, that's what they would have passed. When they went 66 and then gave me some options on this on additional, I think another 66,000. My thinking was that we're coming down on the side of U.S. jobs and the unions and all of that, which I support. Then I found out that no, for whatever reason, Congress decided on 66, punted it to me, and the expectation was by some in the United States Congress, because there was many on the other side of this issue, that I would immediately authorize the 66,000. The way I interpreted the way the law was passed, Congress didn't want that additional 66,000 unless I came in and made a hard case for it, which I cannot make. But that said, working with Labor right now, Department of Labor, and finding out where they are, and it's got to be a collaborative effort initially, finding out where they are, if indeed U.S. jobs are being taken by individuals that come here, and I'll put aside all the arguments of how this thing is violated routinely, and I think for the most part it's not, but it is violated routinely. So Labor is going to have to tell me that these jobs, that this additional 66,000 or whatever, simply cannot be filled by U.S. workers, temporary workers, whether they're college kids off of the summer or people who are out of work and need a job. But that's where we are on it right now, waiting for Labor and DHS to collaborate and come up with a recommendation. But I really did think that if Congress wanted it, they'd have simply passed a law with 129 or so thousand. And I would hope the next time we do this that I'm not given the discretion, because it puts me in a place that I'm going to be at odds with Congress, and I never want to do that.
Well, number one, as you know, you and I are roughly been around on this earth pretty close to the same time. Maybe you're a little younger, but when we were in school and the class had to stay after, it was usually because of the actions of one or two, and everybody else had to pay for it. And right now, in my district and other districts, that the data is there. It's historical data that the jobs that we're proposing here, these jobs are not taking, the people who would do the jobs from coming as guest workers are not taking American jobs. And I take your point and your guidance very seriously on the having Congress tell you exactly what we want. And you can assure that that will happen in the future, because I'd like to dialogue with you in the future about how we can eliminate this annual jumping through hoops for the wrong reasons. So thank you, and I yield back.
Thanks, Congressman.
Gentleman yields back, and Mr. Gallagher from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for
stepping out, but I was greeting an honor flight from my district, and we had World War II vets and Korean War and Vietnam vets being escorted by Iraq and Afghanistan vets. And so it just kind of puts our task and your task, our shared task, in perspective. And I want to thank you for being so proactive in your engagement with the committee. I'm honored to chair the task force on denying terrorist entry in the United States, and I really look forward to working with you and your team as the work of that task force progresses and as we come up with a set of serious and common sense solution for keeping those who would seek to destroy our way of life out of this country. But I want to return to a topic that we talked a bit about last time you were here, which is, as we close off the legal ways or even the physical ways terrorists might seek to come into this country, we know these groups are going to adapt. And in fact, the easiest way for them to get in is through digital borders. And the question of online radicalization is such a difficult problem. And I'd just be interested in getting your thoughts, having been in the job now for some time, on where you think we're headed, and specifically in light of the fact that the Office of Community Partnerships, which is responsible for the department's CVE activities, countering violent extremism, is presently under your review, and the proposed budget offers no additional funding for CVE programs. Just in light of the recent attacks in Europe and the President's own repeated rhetoric of combating extremism, do you believe that DHS should reconsider and recalibrate the purpose and the implementation of CVE programs across America?
Congress, actually, that's what we're doing. In my experience, certainly as a senior officer in the U.S. military, and then took that baggage, if you will, into this job, there's so many programs that the U.S. government pays into that once it's, once the money is appropriated, whether it's the State Department, the Defense Department, DHS, they don't look at the program and say, okay, how's it working? What are the metrics of success? And if you can't establish whether it's working or not, you have no metrics of success, then either change the program or eliminate the program. So when I came into this job, the CVE grants, the first question, as I always ask, is what's the metric of success here? How do we know that this program results in fewer radicalized kids? How do we know that? And it was, well, it's a good program, sir. I know it's a good program in terms of what it's trying to accomplish, saving lives and keeping kids from, murdering people and killing themselves. When I say kids, that's generally younger people that are doing these things. But is it working? Or are we just pouring, good money after bad?
Sure.
So I had my staff look long and hard at it. By the way, every conversation I have with someone from another country, or from, from another country, I asked them about this issue. How are you getting at the problem? How do you do this? Is it possible? Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia, Israel yesterday, many West European countries, Canada. How do you get after this thing? I talked to, the state and local law enforcement. Do you have programs? Vast majority don't. That's interesting. Why don't you? Well, we don't think it's not high on our priority, or we don't think there's, but the point is, I'm not so sure we can prevent it. So then we looked at, okay, how then, if we can prevent it, who are the preventers? And of course, you would start out by parents. They see what their kids are, they listen to what their kids are saying at home. And this applies, by the way, to white supremacists, neo-Nazis, as well as young possible radicalized kids who are Islamic. So they listen. So how do we make sure they understand that they should get their son or daughter help?
Sure.
How about the imams and the priests as well, and the priests and the ministers? Again, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis and all of this. When they hear their young people saying silly things, stupid things, are they comfortable? Do they know that they can call, whether it's the police or social services, to get the kid help? So that's where I'm looking at. Sure. Putting CVE money as opposed to the kind of great program what it's trying to accomplish, but who knows?
We don't know if it has
Sorry.
an effect. Can I, quickly, having just come back from Asia, you talk to the Singaporeans, and they're looking at the Philippines, they're looking at Indonesia, and they want to be incredibly proactive so that it doesn't become a problem for them. I'd just be interested, to the extent you can share it, in those conversations, has a particular model
emerged of a partner that's doing it well that we could draw some lessons learned from?
I think some of them are doing it well, but we could never do it in our country because of
That's right.
our laws. And I'm not even, I would never argue to change. But some countries, as an example, simply send officials to the mosques. And they, first of all, tell the imams what to say. And then they go there, and if the imam doesn't say that, then they jail the imam. We would never do that. We should never do that. A lot of them, follow the internet. And if someone's on Inspire magazine, they go down and arrest them and put them in a holding tank for a while and decide when they're going to release them. So those are, and I don't think, frankly, those are working. But I'm just saying that that's one end of the spectrum. Our end of the spectrum, I believe, is working with parents, priests, local religious leaders, boys, whoever, so that when they see their kids saying crazy things or on the internet sites all the time. I mean, when I grew up, it was like, well, there was no internet, but it was like, the things that parents would watch out for was drug use and all of that kind of thing. This is much more serious than that.
Sure.
So I think best practices are community involvement, certain parental involvement, law enforcement involvement. I think that's where the solution is. So that's where I am on CVE.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I promised him I wouldn't go over 5 minutes, and I lied.
Well, I went over, sorry.
And I just a plug for the task force work. I really look forward to working with you and hope we get proactive engagement. So I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
And we appreciate your work on that task force. This should be your last 5 minutes of questioning, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Ratcliffe.
Secretary Kelly, great to see you again. Thank you for your service. I hope you've had a good first 6 months. As I told you 6 months ago, I don't envy you because I view the job that you have as among the most difficult and the most important in our federal government. Traditionally, providing for the common defense meant securing the sovereignty and integrity of our territorial borders. But increasingly, of course, as great a threat as there is to our physical borders, we have those to our digital borders now. And I know that's a part of your charge and part of your challenge, and why I view your job is so critical, and our role here in Congress as being critical as well in making sure you've got the tools that you need to fight those challenges efficiently and effectively. As the chairman of the Cybersecurity Subcommittee, I want to focus on my limited time on a couple of the budget-related questions as it pertains to cybersecurity. The budget request from the administration includes an increase for the CDM program, the Continuing Diagnostics and Mitigation Program, but a decrease of almost $35 million for the Einstein program for fiscal year 2018 to align operations and maintenance funding with the planned acquisition profile. So can you give me some sense of the reasons for the increase on the one hand and the decrease on the other?
I'd first start out by saying, you say 6 months, it's been 129 days. It seems like 6 years. On the reduction, and I can get back with a more detailed answer. My understanding is with Einstein, as we continue to develop it, we will need more money in the future. But in the meantime, right now, I believe it's because we can't spend that money right now. I may be wrong, but I'll get back to you, Congressman.
Okay, well, one of the other challenges that you and I have agreed that we've identified does relate to the cyber workforce. And we've got it as sort of a macro issue in this country, but also specifically within the Department of Homeland Security. And so does the FY18 request include funding or enough funding from your perspective for new accepted service salaries and incentives to bring on the type of cybersecurity talent we need at the Department of Homeland Security?
I think we're good right now, but as this field expands, obviously the government pays a certain amount of money and the private sector pays most often a lot more. And so how do you keep them? It's kind of what the same kind of problem the services are going through, the military. There are certain people that want to serve their country. It's pure. It's from the heart. They don't worry about the money as long as they're not going to go completely broke. But then there are other people, and I'm not criticizing, that get drawn away from the military, as an example, or federal government, and go off into make very, very lucrative amounts of money in the private sector. The military solves this problem oftentimes with, and it just doesn't apply to cyber warriors, it could be pilots, whatever, with paying bonuses. I don't think we're there right now. But those are the kind of things in future. If we're going to have a viable cyber force, which we need to without question, we may have to, well, we will always have to pay for it, and we may have to find innovative ways to pay for it in the future, because it's the demand for these kind of professionals is exponentially increasing, and we're going to have to find ways to make sure we have the best sitting in federal jobs working with industry.
Terrific, thank you. One of the challenges that we face is not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level with respect to the cybersecurity issues that are out there. And I don't know, Secretary, whether you've had a chance to take inventory of all the assets that you have, and whether or not you've had a chance to go down to the National Computer Forensics Institute in Hoover, Alabama, or what that facility specifically does. I was fortunate a few weeks ago, we moved legislation here through the House that would authorize the NCFI into law, and it's a facility that's run by the Secret Service for the purpose of training state and local law enforcement, from detectives and investigators to prosecutors to judges in handling digital evidence, so that we can prosecute cybercrime, which according to some reports has become more profitable than drug trafficking. So I don't want to put you on the spot, and I'm not asking for a commitment, but I would ask that I do expect that that'll move through the Senate as well, and to the extent that President Trump asks for your opinion with regard to that, I would appreciate it if your team could get you briefed on those issues, because I think it's vitally, critically important that we support our state and locals with respect to these cyber challenges as well, and law enforcement plays a huge part of that.
Congressman, I'll do that, and I should mention, and you did, the tremendous work the Secret Service does. Most people have no idea that as part of their responsibility, they're very deep into cyber in terms of commercial violations and crimes. They're very, very good at what they do, and they're part of this huge collaborative effort throughout the federal government and the private sector to protect the nets. So thank you for mentioning the Secret Service. They are a multifaceted organization, and good men and women all.
Well, thank you, and again, I thank you for your service, but I also appreciate, I will tell you, Secretary, that you are already inspiring confidence with respect to how you've approached the task at hand, the very difficult, unenviable task and challenge that you have. But I do want you to know that we all appreciate the way that you've really rolled into this in the first 129 days. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Gentleman yields back. Are the ranking members recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me thank the Secretary also. Obviously, you've done a very good job here today, quite expansive in sharing your width of knowledge and breadth of knowledge. I thank you for it, and I look forward to working with you going forward. I'll ask unanimous consent to submit a statement from the National Treasury Employees Union on the President's budget for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Yield back.
And that concludes our hearing. Mr. Secretary, let me just say thank you for being generous with your time. I think you'll find this committee a little more friendly sometimes than others, perhaps. But I also want to say, these are dangerous times, and I feel better knowing that you're at the helm. And I really appreciate your service in protecting the American people. So with that, pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing will be held open for 10 days. And without objection, the committee stands adjourned.